Survivor Specialist Phil and Alexa are back. Alexa is out of town, but that does not stop us from producing Winning Survivor. We are on our 9th episode, only 2 episodes left to go. Today we're talking about Millennials versus Gen X. We're talking about Survivor Game Changers. We're talking about Heroes, Healers, Hustlers, and we're talking about Ghost Island. 4 winners that are all over the map in terms of if people love them or hate them, because, hey, we have the internet, and that's what we talk about with these 4, because they unfortunately came just in this weird time of very polarizing seasons. As always, joined by Once Upon an Island, who you could find over on YouTube, Once Upon an Island YouTube.
Yeah.
What his name is right here. But what are you working on, Wes?
Dude, today I just dropped the Tony Vlachos story video, which is like 50 minutes long. It's a real banger. I think we probably should address right up front. Why isn't Alexa here? Because people are already asking.
Well, Alexa is unfortunately just out of town with everything that's going on and her job actually getting back into work here. She's just out of town. So hopefully she'll be back for the next one. I think she will be. I don't think there's any reason she wouldn't be. But yeah, she wasn't able to make it this week. And rather than try to find a night that would be other than a Monday, considering Tuesdays and Thursdays I'm doing a class, and then Wednesday is Russell's thing, all of a sudden the entire week would be gone, and then that just wouldn't be good either. So we wanted to make sure we put out a 9th episode. I'm a little uncertain. Am I just not good enough for everybody? I mean, am I just not okay? Is it Wes? Is it something about his buff? Like, what is it?
Dress if you want.
Yeah, like, I don't understand. Like, what is it? What is it that makes the 2 of us not good enough for you? We're still going to give you 2 freaking hours of Survivor content in an age of dry Survivor content. So just, I'm asking this in a nice way, of course, obviously. Gamer Girl wants to know if she's fired. I mean, hey, nobody ever said she wasn't. There's still the chance. We have not made an official press release, but keep an eye out.
No comment.
But yeah, we're breaking down 4 of the games that I think are most interesting actually to dissect, because it's 4 very, very polarizing games. Every one of these players have the people who think they absolutely deserve to win, and then every one of them have the people who think that they suck and they don't deserve a thing. And we're going to be talking about Adam Klein, Sarah Lucina, Ben Druber, and Wendell Holland, because I'll never figure out how to say Ben's last name. So that's on you, because I know you had to say it for Russell's thing. So congratulations. That was really well done. But we're going to be talking about these 4. And I think it's a really interesting group that we're about to break down. So let's just kick it off right away with Survivor Millennials versus Gen X. Also, this is the era of,
I want to say something real
annoying
quick.
Names, but go ahead.
Well, for everyone, I know there's a lot of comments last week about how we kind of dogged on Natalie Anderson. I guess more than talked her up about her winning game. So I want to let you know, we heard all of you. We did our extra legwork this week to make sure we're able to positively talk about everyone, even if we dog them at the same time. So it's not just a dog fest. So we did it. We heard you. We're moving with that. Just letting everyone know we did not ignore you.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say I wouldn't talk bad about these players anyway. I like all of them.
Yeah, and we just talk about their game, dogging on their games, not on them as people.
I know. I'm just kidding. But, of course, we have to start off with Adam Klein, who is the greatest winner in Survivor history because he was a Survivor Specialist fan beforehand. I know in here, Catherine Morrissey, it said, Alexa adds a female touch that neither of you can bring. Back when Adam Klein listened to the podcast, it was only men. It was me and Will, which I understand. The female touch is a very important thing to have on this podcast. Especially if you go back and listen to the old school Phil and Will, it's not exactly, the best podcast you're ever going to listen to. But that was what Adam fell in love with before he went out there to play Survivor. And I don't know if he's like ever publicly said it, but he's told me numerous times in like those midnight text messages where he said that we're the reason he won Survivor, and that like we really inspired him to get the job done. But Wes, because this is now into the era of when I really started talking about these players a lot as they were going, I do want to hear a lot from you on this, because anybody can go listen to 30 podcasts about each one of these winners.
Yeah.
What's your take on Adam Klein?
So I do want to, so we've talked about how like previously where I took there was a long break in between, I think China or Micronesia and Korong, where I didn't watch the show because I was like overseas and stuff. And then I came back, watched Korong, and I was like, how did Michelle win? And then to give you an idea of how naive I was, I went into the finale of this season rooting for Ken to win.
I mean, do you have any credibility left right now? Like, I'm just wondering, is there any credibility left over there?
This is before I like really dove deep into Survivor. This is when I was just a casual. back in the day of 2016. But yeah, no, I was definitely I was not when Adam won. I think I shared the mind that a lot of people do, and even if you talk to a lot of casuals now who have not rewatched the season, that Adam only won because he had the sob story. But in reality, Adam's sob story, if you want to call it that, or really it's that his mom had cancer at the time, didn't come up for like most players until the final tribal council. And by that point, they're not like, well, I was going to vote for Ken or Hannah, but now I'll vote for Adam because of his mom's story. That's not how this works. It might be like if there was like a tie between him and somebody, I could see it, but I don't think there was many ties going into final tribal of Millennials versus Gen X.
We've talked to more people from this season than any other season, I think, in the history of the show in terms of who we've interviewed on this podcast.
Yeah.
Every single one of them will tell you that they were voting for Adam no matter what.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest waste of a final tribal council in the history of final tribal councils. Other than maybe Earl versus Cassandra and Dreams, where everybody knew Earl was walking away with it.
Yeah.
Adam was going to get every single vote on this season. And a lot of that, like, and I've never met Ken. I've met Hannah, and Hannah, I really like Hannah. Yeah. But I also can see why people might not want to vote for her at the end of the game. Now, I wasn't out on an island with her. I've been like, in a bar. That's a big difference. But there's just certain personality types that when Hannah's hungry and starting all that, it's kind of like her and Gabby are kind of like similar players, same type of persona. There's no arguing that. And I think that can grate on people a little bit more just because like it's a very like big personality. It's a very just like big, always like their personality. And I don't know if Hannah just connected with them on a human level. Like I think Hannah probably made every one of them laugh their asses off. I think that Hannah is somebody that every single one of them, whenever they go to Los Angeles, texts and is like, hey, do you want to hang out? Because she's really fun. But I don't think she hit that human level that Adam did. And when it came to Ken, I just don't think Ken hit the human level at all with any of them. No. And so I think ultimately it came down to Adam versus Hannah. And I think everybody was going to give it to Adam over Hannah, just based on the relationships that they had with each member of the jury. I personally believe Adam just had a better relationship with every single member of the jury. You could maybe make the argument that Zeke could have voted for Hannah because I know that they were pretty close throughout. But I'm not surprised that nobody else did. So I think this whole BS that we saw on Reddit and just the disgustingness of the internet, which is always my favorite thing in the world, of Adam only won because his mom was dying of cancer is horrific. And anybody who says that should be ashamed of themselves. And it's just awful. It's awful, awful, awful. And it's not true. That's the other thing that's even more infuriating about it is you're using this really personal, devastating moment in a human being's life and trying to twist it to be like, that's the only reason you got what you got. It's bullshit. It's
let's talk about some of the things that Adam did throughout his game that was different from other winners, things that he had to overcome, things that made him the obvious choice when they reached Final Three. Because I think most people will agree that David probably was the clear and runaway winner if he did make Final Three, but that was one of Adam's move, flipping Ken and getting rid of David was one of his like biggest like defining moves of the season. And it's even said during Final Tribal, I believe that like Ken's like, I'm the one who actually flipped, but Adam's the one getting the credit for that flip that Ken flipped,
Yeah. And we're talking about in the Zeke boot. Sorry, I lost you for a second. But we're talking about in the Zeke boot. Correct?
Oh, I'm top of my head. I couldn't tell you which exactly boot. I went back and I rewatched not the entire season, but I went and rewatched a lot of Millennials vs. Gen X. Basically, during Final Tribal, Chris is like, Adam, good on you for flipping Ken and getting. Yeah, I think you're right. It was on the.
It was Zeke because it was right after the rock draw. And Jessica goes home, so that side didn't have the numbers, and then they got Ken.
And he flipped Ken and gets rid of Zeke and completely changes the game. And then David gets out because Adam basically takes credit for Ken winning immunity and making sure David could go home. And it's like, Ken did all this work, but Ken's like doing a horrible job of claiming what he's done. And instead Adam's getting all the credit. Good on Adam, you know?
One of the hardest things to do, I think, in the show is to actually sit down at Final Tribal Council and convince the jury why you should win. I think that's an underrated part of the game. And, it's something that we never saw Russell be able to do. We never saw Amanda Kimmel be able to do. And it's a tough thing to do. And I think like Adam knew that he was more respected than Ken and Hannah when he sat down there at the final three. And so I think because he knew that, he could lean in and really try to, like, anytime that something was brought up, he could be like, no, I get the credit for that. And then they all kind of believed it by that point, because I think when they all left the island, they were talking about Dave and they were talking about Adam. Like, that's all they were talking about when they walked off the island. Nobody was talking about Ken or Hannah. And I know Ken was ultimately the one to win final immunity, but this is a great moment by Adam where he was purposely just staying ahead of David. He didn't care if he finished second place. He knew he just had to beat Dave because then Dave would get voted out. And when you watch that challenge, it's the stacking challenge, and he will just stand there with his hands on his hips until Dave gets close to him, and Dave never does. So Adam knows even if Ken drops it, Adam's going to win immunity, and if Adam doesn't win, Ken's going to win, and he's going to go to the final three because Ken thought that he could beat Adam at the end.
Yeah, Ken had a classic case of scooping from Philippines, or for those who've watched Australian Survivor 2016 edition. I don't know if you've watched that one, Phil, but there's a final two, and it's between a girl who everyone, even I, including myself, not during as a casual, but me now watching it, thought, no, she's not going to win. All this guy has to do in Final Tribal is claim his game and he'll win, and he doesn't do that at all. And she goes on to win, and it's like, what just happened? Everyone's blown away. I don't think it's that extreme here, but it's definitely like Ken did a terrible job claiming his game and claiming why he was even worthy of winning. I mean, to be fair, he does get, I guess, I don't know if he's tied with Hannah. I think he's tied with Hannah, but the Survivor Wiki has him above Hannah. Maybe it's because he received less votes along the way. I don't know. Maybe it's just because they had to put somebody there. But
yeah, I never know how they determine the tiebreaker, and I got to move the mic because doing this for 3 hours kills my back. But I don't know how they determine. I don't know how they determine the tiebreaker when it's 0-0 votes at the end, because we've seen this a bunch of times throughout the history of the show, and they always put somebody ahead of somebody else.
Yeah, I think probably officially they both just get second. But on the wiki, I don't know. I think it's just Ken did receive only 3 votes along the way, and Hannah received 13, which tells you a lot. Because Adam, another move Adam did was he played his first idol, because he got 2. He played his first idol for Hannah and saved her because she was going on that vote. She was gone, if you remember. I believe it was a tie vote, and then he played the idol, or I don't know if that was allowed.
No, wasn't that? No. So he played the idol, I believe, on Hannah at final 9, and it was the vote where Zeke goes home. So he actually ends up wasting that idol, believe it or not.
Because Hannah only had 4 votes against her.
But again, it goes to show that, like, Adam, even though we were all at the time like, that was a bad move, he actually did put himself in a good position there, because he had like backup. He had backup ammunition where, he knew if he wasn't able, because I don't think he just had to convince Ken there. He had to also convince Will Wall to go with him, because Will and Jay were working very close together.
Will and his resume.
Yeah, so he convinces Will and Ken to join on that side, and they vote out Zeke, and Zeke goes home, which is a very, very big move, because if Hannah goes home there, we're probably not looking at a season 1 by Adam Klein. I think Adam is not far long after that. So even though he didn't really need to play the idol for her, it still showed the loyalty. It got him further in the game. I mean, that's back-to-back tribal councils.
Yeah.
Where
it's Zeke and Hannah, and it's like the first time they do Zeke and Hannah, it's deadlocked, and then Jessica unfortunately goes home in that rock draw. And then they go back tribal, nothing changed. It's just Zeke and Hannah still. And by the way, I'm double checking Ken's voting record. Ken actually did vote with Adam for Chris, and then for Zeke the first time, then for Zeke the second time. He was with Adam basically from the Chris vote.
It was Will Wall who he really had to flip. I think it was just that Ken kind of like jumped. I mean, he voted the same as Ken voted the same as Adam the entire time.
Well, no, Ken did not. You're right. Ken did vote with Adam the same entire time. Yeah. Will voted for Michelle and Taylor, and then on the Chris vote, he voted. He flipped over and voted for Chris. So it seems like we may have had maybe the idea that it was on the Zeke vote that all this happened, but reality was that Adam had flipped Ken earlier, and Will is. By the way, is this the first time in Survivor history where like the resume has been mentioned? Because it becomes such a prominent thing after the season. But I feel like this is the first time it gets like on TV mentioned, at least.
I'm not sure if it's the first time it gets mentioned, but it's definitely one of the first times that it's really apparent to the viewer that this is the thing that matters, because Will very much wanted to play the pendulum strategy and he wasn't really able to pull it off. So that's why he does at Final 9 flip over and vote out Zeke, which was a huge move, because just the episode before we had seen them go to rocks, and the side that Will ends up going to is the side that loses out. That was part of Will's strategy though. And it was really mind blowing to a lot of people. And it ends up being the reason why Will goes home next. But, you know, just saying with Adam here, that was back-to-back episodes that he showed just how loyal he was. And we see David Wright try to use that to his advantage in season 38 when he says, I go to rocks for my people. That's what Adam was able to do. And then not only was he able to say, I go to rocks for my people, he was able to say, I play idols for my people. You know, like, and to be able to do both of those things is just a really, really, you know, huge power move at that point in the game. And from there on, after the Zeke boot, Adam was 100% right. That was the biggest vote of the entire thing. So if you're not sure you have Will, play the idol, because from there on, they were never in danger. Adam and them. Adam, Ken, Hannah, David.
Zeke went, that
was the easy Final Four the rest of the game. There was no doubt about it.
For sure. I think it was really telling. From the very beginning, Adam was, I mean, we all know he's a super fan, but like the first episode when like there, you know, it feels like whenever there's like a theme like this, and Jeff really likes to hammer it home, the first episode was really hammer it home. And this season it was all like Gen X works hard and millennials just slack off. And I think in the very first episode, it was like, that was one of the points, and Adam's talking about how like, millennials, they want to do things right now. They don't want to wait. And Adam's like, we should like be working on the shelter. And everyone's like, let's go swimming. And Adam's like, okay, but I think we should work on the shelter. But like, it's like his willingness to go along with what the majority wants to do, even though he's like, in his mind, he knows this is not, we probably should be working on the shelter right now.
This is one of my favorite things that Survivor's ever done is Millennials vs. Gen X. And there's a couple reasons for this. And I always love bringing this up. First of all, we do see Ken McNichol. He's the only one on the Gen X tribe who's like, we should take them seriously. And they purposely put that in because he's the only one who survives the final three. But I also love that if you go back and watch 30 seasons earlier, they're ripping apart Gen X as being lazy and they're Generation X for a reason and they suck and they're just the worst people on the planet. And now all of a sudden they built this country. They built this world. And you're like, are you kidding me? Like 15 years ago, you said they sucked.
In Africa, they're getting ripped apart like Gen X. I think what it is, and for those who are younger, you'll see this as you get older as well. As
everybody hates you once you hit 35. There's nothing you can do about it.
I think it's more that I think it's not really a generation thing. I think it's more just the age group, and whoever the 15 to 25, 15 to like 30 age group is always the one that gets hated on. I don't think it really matters what generation is. So eventually the millennials, which is as we get older, as I fall in that group, we're going to then start dogging on the zillennial or whatever, the Zoomers. I forgot what they're being called now. I'm sure they'll end up getting dogged on. I hate it. I really don't like it. I think this season is like a microcosm though of, which is what Survivor tries to be, of like what society is. And like at this time when Millennials vs. Gen X happened, Survivor was actually timely because you couldn't like go anywhere on the internet without the millennials being made fun of for ruining something, I feel like now we've really moved away from that a lot. Thank goodness.
Now we go home boomer, right? Isn't that what we say? Isn't that the
I
thing
feel like
now?
it's become like a retaliation to all the attacks on millennials, which still not great.
It's a retaliation because Zeke blindsides Chris. That's what it really is. Because
that's why.
That's what we're all doing this for. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
The internet watches Survivor and they're like, that determines my hatred for a group of people. Oh gosh.
And I misspoke before. I said everybody hates you when you turn 35. I meant everybody hates you before you turn 35.
Yeah,
that's what it is. And then you hit 35, and now all of a sudden you're wise and you're elderly and sip cognac.
If you listen to Blink 182, there's a song where it says nobody likes you when you're 23. It doesn't matter what generation. Nobody likes you when you're 23.
That's a fact. That's a fact. That is. But I'll tell you what, I liked me when I was 23, and I like being 23 a lot more than 28. So I'll go out there and I'll say that. But yeah, going over to like Adam's thing, another thing that we don't really talk about, but we see it early on. I think people are surprised by Adam's game too, because at the beginning of the game, he's on the wrong side of the vote when Mari goes home. He thought that was going to be his ride or die. It's actually him and Zeke And people really liked Zeke and thought he was a good player. So why is it that Zeke doesn't get trashed for that? But then we move on, and Adam's game really starts to pick up when they switch tribes, and he's with Figgy and Taylor. And on the other side, he's got Ken and he's got Jessica. And he decides to go with Ken and Jessica. And this is when he really does get on Ken's good side. He doesn't so much flip Ken as just get on Ken's good side. And this is the time when it happens because he decides to break up the power couple. Now, was this the smart move? Yeah, Adam won the game. But had Michaela not gone home at the next tribal council and had Jay and Will just stuck to the plan and voted out one of the Gen Xers, I don't know if this would have been the best move for him, because I think that Jessica and Ken, it almost might have been insurmountable to try to overcome at that point, because people like Jay, Michaela, Will would have looked at it as a real negative. And I don't know if it would have helped, considering we end up at a 5-5 vote at Final 10. So I don't know. I don't know if it would have been the best. But obviously it really, really worked because he wins the game. And also he splits up a power. Is this a power couple? Do we consider Figgy and Taylor a power couple?
I mean, they're a couple. I don't know if they're a power couple.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of people who are working together. Can you remind me real quick? So I've looked at this multiple times, and I haven't actually gone back and rewatched the entire season. What was the summit on day 8? Does that have any impact on what we're talking about right now?
No, the summit on day 8 has no impact whatsoever on the entire game.
I read that every time, and I'm like, man, I got to rewatch that episode because I do not remember the summit.
No, the summit is just like a really, really dumb idea that never pulls out.
Yeah, they never do that one again.
Yeah, it never. I mean, it's something that they could do because we see a similar thing in Survivor Amazon, but this just led to nothing.
Yeah, Survivor Amazon was a little different. They that was a little. I feel like the way they did in Survivor Amazon more. But anyways, so I'm trying to look at I have a whole list of things Adam did. Let's see. So Williams with Tribe. So one of his trademarks of this season was how he was honest with everyone, or he at least gave the appearance of like, I'm going to tell you everything I'm thinking or everything. And so he was honest to a point where it's like, oh, I can trust Adam. He tells me whatever he's thinking. But then Adam could get away with things because it always seemed like Adam was just being honest with you about everything. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that was definitely one of his trademarks this season.
I agree. And it's also what almost got him in trouble, because when he goes and eats with Taylor, that was one of the big moments where people are like, wow, this guy sucks at Survivor. What a rookie mistake and all of that, which we find out is heavily played up by the edit. And everybody was going to vote out Taylor. They always say that's the only boot on the season that wasn't a blindside. So, yeah, I think that you're right. And I think it almost cost him. And we see it does cost him in Winners at War eventually, because he tries to play a similar type of game where it's like, I'm being honest with you and all that, but he's not necessarily being honest with you.
I think, so I'm not going to talk too much about Winners at War because that's not what this game's about, but you do see almost the same Adam just like transplanted from the season in Winners at War. And so it's almost like, what would happen if things didn't go Adam's way? And it's like, that's what his game of Winners at War was. Because once again, he's like the narrator of his season. Or I'm sorry, not of his season, but of that season, even though he only gets like second boot of he gets in the merge and it's like second one out, I think. But he gets like so many confessionals. It's like, you almost do have like this, you almost can, compare the two, because in a way, like both times we're getting Adam's story because he just knows how to yell at the camera.
No, I totally agree. We do. We definitely get Adam's story in both seasons. And this season was Jay, Adam, and David. Those were the three people who were telling the story here. Michaela was, until she went home. She was a huge impact on the game. Zeke and Brett had their moments, but Zeke and Brett weren't. I don't consider them like a list on this season. I think that they've been very big in the community since and all that, and Zeke plays again and all that. But
I love them on Amazing Race, by the way. For anyone who
Brett and Chris,
watch Amazing Race 31, everyone. You'll see Chris and Brett, Corinne and Eliza, and Rupert and Laura. And the 6 of them don't do like amazing, but Chris and Brett make it pretty far.
Well, Chris and Brett actually, once COVID hit, they actually are still stranded in Croatia in that water. They still haven't been allowed to leave yet. So they've been stuck in Croatia looking for those gold coins actually for the last, I guess now we're at like 10 or 11 months.
You're reminding me of bad memories. It was great.
If you haven't seen the season, it's brutal.
Great season.
It's very entertaining, and Chris and Brett, oh, they blew it,
Yeah.
man. They absolutely
They
blew it.
did. They were doing so well too. So yes. Remember? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. He tells Taylor about his steal reward and gets burned. I guess that's what you just said, where he's like honest to a fault. And it's like, I feel like though when he does that, it's almost like it doesn't feel, and I could be wrong, but it doesn't feel like he like planned that decision to tell Taylor. It felt like Adam did make some emotional decisions this season, and it worked out when it came to like Jay, but it didn't work out here when it came to Taylor. Taylor took it and burned him. Taylor goes home, thankfully, where he does. Otherwise,
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
If
Taylor makes it further, I think he would be undercutting Adam a lot. So Taylor going where he goes actually is probably one of the best case scenario considering what Adam told him.
And I think that was part of Adam's plan. Is I think he knew that Taylor was going to end up going around this spot. So part of his strategy was, well, if I get on his good side, I'm going to get his vote at the jury. And he was playing jury votes there, knowing that everybody was still going to vote him out no matter what anyway. So it's very interesting to think about from that perspective.
Yeah. Let's see. Another note I got is, I did mention this at the beginning, kind of like, because I'm as a casual, this is what I thought. Of course, upon rewatching and reevaluating, Adam did not win simply because his mom had stage 4 cancer. But the casual, and by that I mean like the Facebook survivor groups, most of them would probably still say this is one of his main reasons, and it's not. His mom has stage 4 cancer, and actually, if you watch pretty much all season, he keeps it to himself with the exception of Jay. And when he tells Jay, it's like instant friendship. Even though they're working against each other strategically, it's very like endearing. And it really helps sell his story because Adam's story this season, I can't wait to get to the season for my channel because Adam's story is one of the most compelling stories. Even if you're not a huge fan of Adam, it's just the story of this season with Adam, super compelling.
It really is.
And it's like the Winners of War stories, like an epilogue. It's like, you don't need to watch. You don't need to know that story. It's like a nice if you wanted like a follow-up. But this is like really where his story is. And it's like, I know Survivor probably wasn't thinking, let's get him on while his mom has cancer. Yeah. But like I can't think of anyone else who's been on the show. Jenna Maraska, I know but she obviously left for good reason. Where like somebody played and got through the whole season, like has like this huge emotional thing just weighing on them. Yeah. And it's like, so it really brings you to like give like those real connections with him. And at the same time, watch him like hit these highs. You're like more happy for him because what he's suffering through the whole season. It's like, you can script something like that, but it hits a lot more knowing that this isn't scripted.
No, this is like he even said at the reunion, this is my life. This is what really happened. And it's amazing that people don't really understand the level of like what he was going through on that season and to not be able to tell anybody. And even when he gets the family reward, like there was no pity party for Adam on this season. It wasn't, oh, well, this is what's happening, so now we're going to treat you differently on the show. No. He wanted it to not be about that. And so when he gets to go on the family visit with his brother Evan, and they have that moment where it's like, hey, she's doing okay, like she's still like that conversation is everything to him because he hasn't told anybody yet. And I
wonder if that was, not to completely cut you off here, but I do wonder if part of that was because this season I think was filmed right after Cambodia finished airing. Or like Cambodia had already finished airing by the time the season was shooting. So and Jeremy of course was accused a ton of at Final Tribal, he brought up all these personal things. And of course, that's why everyone voted for him. Another casual thought process about why Jeremy won.
Which is insane.
I know. But I'm just saying, like, I wonder if Adam had taken that into account. Like, he's being a super fan, he knows how people reacted to Jeremy. And this is like right after, he's like, well, I don't want people to think just because I've been saying my mom has cancer all season, that's why I won, or that's how I did, how well I did,
Absolutely.
So I wonder if that was a huge factor. I've never asked him. Have you ever asked him that? Because I know you've had him on.
No, I don't think I've ever asked him that specifically, but I don't think he wanted his Survivor experience to be defined by that. And unfortunately, like I always said, I said it earlier in this, and then you quickly course corrected me, but I think we just live in an ugly age of internet. I just think we live in an ugly age, and it really showed its ugliest face during this whole Adam situation. And there's some like awful human beings out there who are unfortunate. I don't even think they're part of the Survivor community. I just think they see this situation and they say it. I don't think Adam wanted to be defined by that, but It's a real thing that happened to a real human being.
Yeah.
They were all voting for him no matter what at the end. Whether this came out or not, they were voting for him. It just happened to be something that Jay said, hey, tell them everything so that it's like you didn't need to use this to get through the game.
Yeah, and I think he does sweep the jury. I wonder thought process, do you think that if it's Adam versus David, like what's the count here on the jury? Who's voting for who? Because he still definitely gets Jay's vote. I don't think Jay flips.
He gets Jay's vote, but he doesn't get the Sunday, Brett, Chris.
The Gen Xers.
Yeah, he doesn't get the Gen Xers. I don't even think he gets Will Wall. I don't think he gets Z. Like, he gets beat pretty bad if he sits there against David Wright. I think he probably loses 7-3, something like that. Like, it's a Nick Wilson versus Mike White type situation. I don't think it's close.
Yeah, I feel like you're probably right. I feel like Adam's probably the second best player of the season, but he played the best game, which is something we commonly say with not a lot of winners, but I feel like some of the winners where it's like, people will argue like Jenna wasn't the best player in her season. Like, no, but she played the best game, and that's all you really got to do. You're not playing like a 7-game series. You're only playing one game. You only got to play one game the best. This isn't like baseball or basketball or hockey, so
hit me with sorry, I thought you were. I was just gonna say hit me with confessional counts because we're over a half hour, so we can.
Yeah. Well, who do you think had the most this season?
I'm assuming it was David.
Yeah, but it wasn't by a lot. Guess how much David had?
Like 57.
He had 56. Adam had 53. Yeah. They both made it to the finale. Of course, Adam made it one more booth than him, so he got a little bit more airtime. But it was super close actually between the two of them. You think?
And Jay was up there too, right?
Jay had 49. He had the third most. Zeke followed with 40. For anyone who's wondering where I get these, it's on Survivor Sucks. I just look up whatever season you're talking about and the confessional count, and someone has made like a very comprehensive list of every single season separated. So this is not like I'm counting these. Zeke was next, and then after that it gets pretty. I think Hannah had the third most, or Hannah had the fourth most, fifth most, whatever it was. From there it gets pretty good. By the way, the editing of the season, with the exception of Sunday, who only had like less than a confessional episode, which sucks. Everyone else was actually, I think, pretty well edited in terms of confessional.
Yeah, I think Will Wall was the only other one because he started to pick it up towards the end, and early on we didn't really see much of him.
Really true. Will, like, more than half his confessionals were like last 2 episodes for him.
Well, and I think too, and just like, one last thing here on this, I think what made this season so entertaining for a lot of fans, myself included, and why I have it in my top 10 for sure, is because of how well it was edited. You went into that finale with 3 players who legitimately could win in Jay.
In your mind.
In Jay, David, and Adam. You weren't sure which one was actually going to pull it out until you actually saw the final immunity challenge. And I know a lot of people were like, well, Jay can't win because he screwed over Michaela. Jay could have won. Jay gets to the end. Jay's getting a lot of votes too. I don't think he beats David, but I think he could probably beat Adam.
Oh.
And that's why Adam gets rid of him and says, you're in my way.
Yeah.
So Adam knew it too.
That's actually what I appreciate about. I know it's his downfall in Winners at War, but that's actually what I appreciate about Adam is like how willing he is to be open, because I feel like a lot of people who win Survivor or play Survivor are playing like these compelling games, but they're just not like open. Like, even if you're not going to be open with other players in your season, that's fine. Just be open with us. But I feel like a lot of that gets carried over. Like, they're not open with them, so they're not open with us, and it's like, man, like compartment. That's what Boston Rob does so well. I know how much you don't care for him, but what he does so well is he, like, his confessionals to us are like so intriguing to watch. And he's not telling the players he's playing with all the things he's saying to us. And that's what makes him such good TV. Adam does that this season, and he kind of just does it all the time, but he does it more so when he's talking to us, like telling us all these things. Like, Adam didn't have to tell anyone ever about his mom. We could have dropped that bomb on us. He could have dropped that on us when we got to the family visit or whatever, and I've been like, wait, what? Like, kind of like how Jenna was in the Amazon, where it's like, we had no idea Jenna's mom had any issues until we got, and maybe that was the editing. But I feel like if that was such a prevalent part of what was happening with her, we would have heard about that earlier. But I think she kind of kept it to herself, is my point.
I think she did too, and that's why I think Matt ultimately says she's being selfish, because I don't think Matt actually knew the severity of the situation, because I just don't think he knew.
Exactly. But here, Adam is so open like the whole season. And I think if anyone here watching this ever play Survivor, just be open to the camera. You'll get more time on
that's all you need.
Yep, just be open to the camera. You don't even have to be a good player. Just be open to the camera. They'll show you.
Well, let's jump over to somebody else who was very open to the camera, who always talked about all of their emotions and everything they were thinking all the time, and is everybody's favorite confessional giver in the history of the show, which is the winner of Survivor Game Changer, Sarah Lacina. And Sarah, we had Sarah on. It's actually our highest rated video, so I got to throw that in there just as like a little plug for ourselves. Over 40K.
So many views on that one.
I know. Over 40K. Her son is in it. He's really good. He's got a haircut from Sarah. But I think Sarah is a tough personality, and I'll just preface with this, and then I'll let you go because, like I said, being that I talked about Game Changers, she's a tough TV personality. Very dry sense of humor. Yes. Dry sense of humor doesn't really work well. It worked with Tyson. It worked with Courtney, but they weren't given edits to win the game the first time they play. So we could just watch them be themselves and just be snippy and say little dry comments that we go, oh my God, I can't believe they just said that. But we didn't have to root for them the way we had to root for Sarah to win the game ultimately at the end. So I think it's a tough thing for editors to actually edit, which is the winning game of Sarah Lacina. All that being said, I think she's a phenomenal player. I think she played a phenomenal game in Survivor Game Changers and really learned from her mistakes her first time around. So, I think this is a great winner. Weird cast, but great winner. What do you got for me on Sarah?
I feel like
as I'm seeing.
I don't want to get too much into the cast, but it's definitely, I agree with the consensus, or it's like half Game Changers, half like. But Sarah here. So something she says, I know everyone remembers the confessional where she's like, last time I played like a cop, this time I'm playing like a criminal. Before that, she actually prefaces that this time she's going to play like a silent assassin. And I feel like I would say that's a probably more accurate description of how she played the season. The criminal one, of course, is more catchy because she is a cop. But I feel like the silent assassin, while not as catchy, is definitely more how I would describe her game this season. Because I feel like Sarah pre-merge, like, where's Sarah? It's not really until the merge where Sarah shows up. But I do think Sarah and Cagayan, I feel like, was definitely like Sarah 1.0. I don't know how to say it better. Maybe like if this is the winning Sarah and Cagayan was like Sarah in school learning how to win, because obviously she watched Tony. But you definitely, if you watch Cagayan after watching Game Changers, which I don't know why you'd watch it in that order.
I don't either.
For some reason, you were just like studying Sarah, like I study all these winners. You would see that like there's a lot of hints of like how Sarah plays in Game Changers and even in Winners of War in Cagayan. It's just not refined yet. She does so many things. I don't have a lot of specifics because I didn't dive deep into her Cagayan game yet. But she does so many things there where I'm like, I see the Sarah who won. It's just not. She's just not. She's like she kind of got that whole like swear my badge thing, which of course everyone does remember, which I think does ultimately stand in her way. Of course, flipping at the merge, but she does. There's a lot of hints there, so it's not like Sarah in Game Changers came out of left field. It's just that everyone after Cagayan kind of forgot about her because she goes home so early. Absolutely. She kind of had like the Tony and Game Changers thing where the threat level got lowered because they didn't perform super well.
Yeah, and we got the super comment here from JPB Productions. Explain how Sarah replicated Tony's Cagayan game, which you were kind of doing, but I think it makes sense. I think she did learn. It's kind of like Philip Shepard learning from Boston Rob, except learning it the right way, not the wrong way. Where like she learned because she got burned so bad. I remember sitting there watching that finale and being like, she is so bitter. Like, grow up. You played Survivor. And then she did grow up. And I think that's what's amazing about her and what I really love so much about Sarah is that she learned from her mistakes and learned from her naivete, however you want to say. Do you want to pronounce it that way or do you want to pronounce it just naivete? Yeah, whatever. But she learned from that. And she learned that she needed to play a different game the next time she went out. And she used other people's naivete against them. And I think that really worked for her because that's what Tony did the first time. They were naive to the fact of what the Super Idol was, all of that he was a cop, all these things. And she plays very similarly in the second outing. She kind of treats not everybody because everybody thought they were best friends, but also she burns a lot of those people. So she kind of treats a lot of her cast the same way Tony treated her, which is, I'm going to keep you really close and I'm going to cut you when I don't need you anymore.
Silent assassin. That's exactly what she played. I do want to note though there was little moments throughout the season where we did learn more about her as a person. I think one of them was and I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. I know it was at Tribal, but I don't know if it was at the Zeke trial, the one we all know I'm talking about, where she talks about how she gets like really vulnerable about her upbringing, and people on the season have come out afterwards and said like Sarah was like, she's such a good social player. Like I felt like she's my friend, and it's like you don't feel a lot of that because in confessional she's not our friend. But I feel like if she's doing a lot of moments like this, where she did at Tribal, where she's talking about like her upbringing, and I think it was at the Zeke one, so it was like a real emotional time for everybody. I think if she's doing that a lot more, we just weren't shown it. Then yeah, I totally get how like people are like, Sarah and we're like, I have nothing. We're like this. We're like this, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
no, I think you're right though. I think you're right. And it's fascinating because that's how she felt with Tony.
Yeah.
So now she turns around and she makes everybody feel that exact same way with her. It's a great, I mean, she learned to, like I said, grow up, realize it's a game, and use that against all of them. You know how it feels to get burned that way, but you also know that that's how it won that person the game. Now you got to do the same thing. And she did a great job with it. I mean, she did a really great job of connecting with people on a really, really personal level. And we see it again in Survivor Winners at War. She connects with a lot of people on a very personal level. And I think she does a great job of it. But I don't know if Sarah is the same if she doesn't lose the first time.
All the press going into Winners at War, everyone's like, after Game Changers, everyone's like, I gotta get Sarah. Sarah's going early this season, and then she gets all the way to 4th in Winners at War, and it's like, if there was no Edge of Extinction season, she's final 3. Yeah, like I don't think she doesn't make. I think it's Natalie blows that up in a way that we can debate about. But
it probably is Tony, Sarah, and Michelle in the final 3.
It's definitely her, Michelle, and I think Tony. I think Tony still makes the final 3 if there's no Edge. But wow, I mean, yeah, Sarah is like a player who is like definitely legend status because of Cagayan and then her progression of this season, and the fact that even though this isn't like a top tier like cast, this is more like a blood versus water cast in my mind, or like Tyson one where it's like half like not even in his cast we argued like it wasn't really half like great players, but in this cast it's like you got half great players and then like half like
yeah. You probably more than half where you're like, what?
I feel like this cast can definitely be argued as a stronger cast than Blood versus Water, even though Blood versus Water might be more fun to watch. But yeah,
that's true too. But I think also too, like you have like half of the Blood versus Water returnees. That means 5. Half of this is 10, so it feels like a lot. Like it feels like you're working with a lot of people here who are question marks, and some of them I really wanted to see play again. Haley Ford was somebody I was like, man, I think she's got game. I would love to see Haley play again.
Yeah,
and even Sarah. I mean, Sarah was not somebody everybody was like clamoring for to come back and play. So sometimes it works. Brad Culpepper, whatever. And then there's other people who it just absolutely doesn't work.
I think and it's not about the runner-up, but Culpepper also progresses a lot from his first season. And since he's in the final 3 here with Sarah, I think it's important to note that the difference between these two is Culpepper did not make the social connection Sarah did.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, he annoyed people more than anything.
Yeah, and I've heard stories about how he even annoyed like production and stuff. I can't confirm any of that, but him just annoying people is ultimately not going to sit well if you're sitting against somebody who people felt like they were friends with the whole season, Yeah. So, Sarah did some other things. She also got the most jury votes for a woman tied. She didn't. I don't think she has like the reigning champ, but I think she's tied with Natalie White and, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim Spradlin. I think it's 7.
Kim Spradlin. Yeah.
Yeah. They all have 7. So a dominant female winner, the last female winner we've had as of time of recording, of course. Remember when Michaela's like sitting on the sit-out bench and she's just like,
yeah.
And then Sarah is like on that advantage, man. And then she uses that advantage and she votes Michaela out. Like, oh my gosh.
It's amazing. She she plays the game nonstop. Like Sarah never took off, which is really impressive. Like when you're playing Survivor, you got to be playing 24 hours a day. And she was. And we see that in her Game Changers game. She really does play 24 hours. And, Yeah, she uses it against people, like you said, like with Michaela. But I do think your social thing that you're talking about with Brad, we hear Troyzan kind of talk about it in the Russell's Top 100, where he says Brad and Sarah really didn't get along, and he kind of played the middleman. I think that's true, but I also think that that's more on Brad than Sarah. I think Brad probably rubs people the wrong way more than Sarah did, which is ultimately why Sarah ends up getting the votes at the end. Because I think if you asked anybody on that jury now, 4 years removed, who's your favorite person from that season, almost every single one of them would say Troyzan. If you had to pick somebody in that final three, who would you vote for now based on just who you like the most? It would be Troyzan. But they all vote for Sarah because they don't think Troyzan did enough, and they just got along with her a lot better than they got along with Brad.
Yeah. Well, Sarah just played a great social game, and it's just here we are in season 34 learning the same lesson we should have learned from season 1, in case we haven't, that gets repeated over and over throughout the course of Survivor. Your social game is the most important thing. All these other things that do to get you to the end are great, like getting Michaela's advantage that she should have gotten off that bench, playing it against her and putting her out is such a great move. But if your social game sucks, it ultimately will not matter. You'll be seeing that final three, trying to explain why you're the one who should win. A la Dean and Tommy, I think, is probably our most recent comparison. And everyone being like, yeah, but like, I don't really like you. Or but like, sure, you got like these moves, but like, who are you? You know,
who are you?
Like which I think is more what Dean's issue was, but we'll get there when we get there.
I mean, it's the whole thing with Brian Heidick back and you go all the way back to Survivor Thailand. It's a lesson a lot of people haven't learned. When Penny walks up to him and says, what is name something about me?
Yeah.
And he literally couldn't do it. And then Clay was just like, I know where you're from. I know your kids or your sister's names, whatever. And like Brian didn't even know where she was from. I don't even think Brian knew her last name.
No, I think we saw, and we've already talked about Thailand, but like I agree with you. Like I feel like Brian, I know it's argued like if he plays a modern season, he would win or he would do really well, and I don't think so. I think now I'm just, and that's under the assumption it's the same Brian.
Yeah. I'm using it more as an example of that. That is one of the first instances where it's like if you don't know something about somebody, you're not going to get their vote, and we still see it. People making the same mistake 30 seasons later.
And because he tried to go to the end, that's why he won. Because really, his final tribal really exposed like the holes in his game that everyone did not realize till the end. But here, you know, we're in season 34, and it's like this is still important. Like getting to know people is still important. But you have to get to know people and vote them out, and have them not think that, you know, well, I got to know you. Why'd you vote me out? Now this is a personal attack against me. Like I thought we were friends. Like you have to vote them out, and for them to either think you didn't do it to them, which Sarah definitely does this season. I believe on multiple occasions. Sierra Dawn Thomas goes home. Doesn't she will her legacy advantage after she gets voted out? And Sarah's like, oh, Sierra, you're going home, and I didn't vote for you. You know, but Sierra. So Sierra's sitting in final tribal. And at that point, she knows that Sarah voted her out because, of course, she's been told by people afterwards. And it's even acknowledged during final tribal. But on her way out the door, she feels good about Sarah. And sometimes that's like a first impression. It's almost like that's more important. Like, well, you know what? When they voted me out, I didn't feel like crap. And Tony does that in Winners at War too, where it's like Boston Rob's like, Tony, everyone doesn't hate you. How did you do it? Like, I can't do that. He didn't say that part, but he should have. And it's like here, the same thing. Sarah makes people feel good or feel okay with her, at least, when they get voted out, which I think is so crucial. It's something that every winner needs to, or every player needs to know how to do if they want to win.
Absolutely. It's one of the most important things to do in the game, and a lot of what people take for granted. And we talked about this a lot.
Somebody corrected me. Sarah did not vote for Sarah. I'm sorry. You're right. She did not vote for Sarah. My bad. But she felt good on the way out the door. It's a whole thing.
I mean, of course, Sierra was going to vote for Brad because they were so close from the But no, I do think that, like, you know, it's something that people don't really understand. So, like we've said a lot throughout this series is, you can vote the wrong way and still have it be a good vote. There's a such thing as a good wrong vote. And I think Sarah kind of was good at that. And I don't know what her exact voting history is, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to look now. She doesn't vote for Haley. Haley votes for her to win. She votes out. Let me see. She votes out,
I think, everybody. Except for Haley, she votes out everyone else.
Yeah, it does look like she votes out everyone. Well, and Marie, obviously.
She did topple the Queen Sandra. I mean, it wasn't her by herself, but she is part of that Sandra vote, which of course is a thing for her. She also, if I recall correctly, and this is unfortunate for Cirie, because Cirie was going to steal Sarah's vote, but Sarah actually kind of tricks Cirie, with Cirie thinking she has that advantage from Sarah. And then Jeff's like, no, actually, that's non-transferable, as it says at the bottom of the piece of paper.
Yep.
And Sarah's like, give it back. And I thought Sarah was going to steal Cirie's vote, which would have been probably not the best social move, but
no,
TV. But she doesn't. She takes Ty's vote. But
she takes Ty's vote and then votes for Michaela anyway. She wasn't going to vote for Cirie or
that. Like, I'm not a big fan of legacy advantages. But the way that one worked out was like such good TV. From the time she gets it from Michaela to the time Cirie tries to play it against Sarah, from the time Sarah uses it on Michaela, like, I'm not a huge fan of it, and I feel like that should have been the only time. But man, did it work out this season?
It really did, and it worked out perfectly. And then what's amazing about it too is when you look at it, she ends up voting out Michaela, and Ty gets 2 votes, Michaela gets 4 votes, and she steals Ty's vote. But like, she steals Ty's vote, making him be like, oh, it's going to be you, when it's really going to be Michaela. And it's just like this whole thing with idols and whatever, because as we see right after that vote, everybody has a freaking idol. So you gotta you have to be thinking about that kind of thing in the game. And it's just a really, really well done play of that.
Mm-hmm. I think I know there's an argument in a lot of seasons, like X player got robbed, like David Wright, you could argue got robbed, and Millennials was Gen X. I've never truly thought, and now that I'm like understanding the game much more than when I was casual, like anybody ever truly got robbed. I understand I was part of the game, so it still could be argued that she wasn't robbed, but this is the only time I really feel like somebody was robbed with Cirie. I feel like Cirie didn't get any chance here.
No.
You know,
because she's never going to win challenges. So the fact that you take away the one thing where if she got to Final 4 or Final 3 or whatever, maybe she could Final 4 or Final 5, I mean, where she could possibly win one challenge and sneak her way in, you take that away from her because there's bogus, where like, she's not an idol person. That's not what she does.
Yeah. To be fair though, in season 34, this is not Panama. Like, it's something, I mean, in Panama, you know, it was there, but it wasn't the same. It was not the same as it is here at all. It is something you do as a player need to be. That's why you could argue Cirie wasn't robbed. This is the only time I feel like she was, but it's like, what is production going to do? Have her make fire against herself? Like, there's nothing left. She can't draw rocks on herself. You know?
Or they could just not have 5 idols in play at Final 6.
Yeah, that was definitely a production mistake for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to have everybody having I mean, when Troyzan found his and never had to play it again, maybe don't hide another one.
Yeah, they definitely and I don't know if that's been fixed since then, since it hasn't come up again.
I don't think it has. I think they want it to happen again. Jeff says it's a great moment. It's one of the worst in the history of the show, but he loves it.
One-time moment only. We should not have. If there's 6 people left, there should be 4 idols. I'm sorry, there should be 3 idols plus individual immunity, and that should be it. There should always be 2 people eligible to be voted out at all times, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I'm trying to see if there's anything else for Sarah. She did a good job at Final Tribal explaining her growth from how she changed in Kagayan, which, as we said with Ken and Adam, is like part of your game is explaining at Final Tribal to make sure people still feel good about you. Because Natalie White basically won the game at Final Tribal because people are going to that thinking they're going to vote for Mick, and they voted for Natalie White instead. Yeah. And it's like, people's votes can change at Final Tribal, and even if they're voting for you, you need to make sure they don't change. You know.
One thing I think is interesting about Sarah is that she never once won an individual immunity. And I think that's something that's, you know, interesting to look at. She very rarely went to pre-merge tribal councils. In her first season, she went to 1. In her second season, she went to 2. In her third season, she went to 3, I believe. But so okay, she's gone to 6 pre-merge tribal councils, but she has never gone to a post-merge tribal council with the immunity necklace around her neck. And I think that's a really impressive feat for somebody who makes it as far as she does. And as much of a beast as Sarah is, like, Sarah could beat you up.
She works out like crazy.
Yeah, she could beat all of us up at the same time. So it's amazing that she never wins one and somehow is not viewed as a threat to be voted out. I don't know if that's a part of her strategy. I don't know if that's just something that happened. Maybe Survivor challenges just don't fit her strengths. Sure. But it is something worth noting that somebody as jacked as Sarah, as, you know, physically fit as she is, and as good of a player as she is in the pre-merge phase and always winning challenges, has never won individual immunity in the post-merge.
I think what's insane is that she doesn't play a perfect game this season, but it's a really good game. And if you look, especially look at just the stat sheet, she receives 3 votes. They get negated in the finale. But other than that, she received no votes. As you said, no individual immunity. So like she's eligible every time for votes. Winners at War, she receives 2 votes. One is when Boston Rob goes and Rob votes for her. The other one is when well, she votes for Nick, and Nick definitely doesn't go there. And
Adam, she gets an Adam vote. She gets it from Adam.
And Adam definitely didn't. Or that I think that's actually
that's when Adam goes home.
Yeah. Interesting. So she only aside from Kagayan, she only receives 2 votes that count against her, 5 if she doesn't negate. Like she does not receive a lot of votes considering how many times she's at pre-merge.
And in Survivor Kagayan, if she doesn't get arrogant, if she doesn't get cocky and be like, I'm the swing vote, she could have won that game too. I mean, but she could have made it so much further. I mean, she would have made it a lot further. She was in a swing position at Final 11, would have been the deciding vote there. And if she would have just played along and not gotten cocky, she's sitting in Final 8, Final 7. Who knows? But the sky was the limit.
No, and in Kagayan, she definitely makes it at least halfway through the merge, I think. I think she makes it to like the episode before the finale or the finale of that season if she doesn't flip and get cocky. I agree. But since then, but I guess the point is she had like this huge growth between seasons, not on the season, which we see a lot. Like David Wright grew a lot on Millennials vs. Gen X. He went from like that, awkward guy to like, he's still awkward, but he's like kind of got like the Cochran thing going where it's like by the end, it's like, who's this guy? And why is the skinny little nerd, all of a sudden a huge threat? Sarah does that in between seasons. She doesn't do that on the season.
I agree 100%.
Which I think is not as interesting TV, but it makes for a better Survivor player. You want your growth to happen before.
I think that's also the thing. I don't think anybody would ever say, and I'm going to put the mic back now, but I don't think anybody would ever say that Sarah's great TV. But I think, she's great. She's great at Survivor. It's hard to deny that.
I think, by the way, we never really talked about could Adam's game win again, which I guess we probably should do when we talk about what Sarah's game win again. Yeah. But I think Sarah's game, which I feel like is a little bit hard to describe, but it's definitely her key thing is that she's willing to I keep tripping on this word. Basically, compartmentalize. Ugh.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Compartmentalize. Yeah.
There you go. The game and friendships, which is what Tony did so well starting with Kagayan. And that's like one of the huge things she learned that she didn't have originally, is that she's able to do that. And I feel like that is like, that's not for everyone, but for certain personalities, it's key to know what the strategy works with your personality. Like we talked about last week, how it's maybe unfair, but if you go into a season and you are a short mom-like female, you're going to be perceived differently than the Ben Driebergens of the world, like the taller, fit alpha males. You're just going to be perceived differently. You have to figure out what strategy works for me and who I am and how I'm going to be perceived. Not everyone can play the same way. And I think it's what makes Survivor so interesting is that different personalities have to play different ways. Everyone cannot play the same way. Because if it did, it'd just be like 20 people trying to do the same thing and it'd be boring. But everyone has to be different.
I agree. And I do think that both of these winners could win again. I think that this is the type of player who could win again. I think Adam, I mean, as much as we'll like be like, oh, Adam didn't know what he was doing his time out there. I think Adam knew what he was doing. I just think that, he overplayed his hand, but also if he somehow gets to the end overplaying his hand, he's got a chance to win it. He knew he had to make and he knew he had to make a lot of big moves to win because he didn't come in as one of the players that people would just vote for because of his name. I think Sarah proved in Winners at War that she could win again. And I think their style, both styles can win. I think Adam's a little bit more chaotic, so it's harder to pull off, but Sarah's 100% could win. I
do think the only thing about Adam, now that Adam and Cochran have won, is if you are a super fan, unless the entire cast or most of the cast.
That's Tommy, though, because Tommy was a super fan, but so was everybody else who was on his cast.
Yeah, see, and that's probably because in between 38 and 39, as you already know, they changed who's doing the casting. So we'll see how that carries over in 41, 42. Mm-hmm. But unless you're on, so if that becomes a thing now where it's like most people actually are big Survivor fans, you don't have to hide that you're a super fan. But if for some reason you're on a season where you realize people around you are not all super fans like you are, a la Shirin and Max on Worlds Apart, where it's like they're the super fans, everyone else isn't.
Here's your sore thumb.
You need to tone it down and not promote that.
Absolutely. And that was one of, who was it? I forget who it was, but I don't know if it was Bradley or somebody like that, but it was somebody on Ghost Island where Brennan Shapiro had said, like, there were people who were just spitting stuff out there. You're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know every little thing?
Like, I'm a fan, but I'm not. It's almost like a lot of Survivor players are like not casuals necessarily, but they're like super casuals. Like, they watch every season, but they watch it like the one time when it aired.
Yep.
At least from my observances.
Well, exactly. And then if you ask them the big names, they remember the big names, and that's it, which is fine. That's how it works. I mean, that makes sense.
I'd rather have that than people who've never seen the show.
Absolutely.
I know Earl is a great winner, but for the most part, it doesn't work out, I think.
I completely agree with you 100% on that. So I think they can both win. What was Sarah's confessional count like on this season? Because I know Troy Sands was atrocious.
She had the most confessionals of the season, believe it or not.
I do believe it because I think it was a terribly edited season.
Terribly. So I know we've talked about total confessionals, and I noticed, and we noted how Co Wrong, I believe, has like the second or third most. It's definitely top 5. Co Wrong had 492. Millennials vs. Gen X had 435, so a big dip. Even though Millennials vs. Gen X, I feel like is a great season in terms of how it was edited, like you said. Game Changers drops again to 412. Like, we almost have we have 80 less confessionals than Co Wrong, and it's like with all these like great characters. So Sarah, take a guess at Sarah. She has the most.
52.
She has 45.
Really
and it's a little bit hard to decipher who has second most, but I believe it is Suri with 39. Debbie Wayner has.
What about Brad?
2. I'm getting there. Hang on.
Really?
Debbie Wayner has third with 32. Brad and Ty both are tied at fourth with 31.
Wow.
And then from there is just a dip. You got your. It's because I think it's because of the boot order. So you have like Tony getting 12 over 2 episodes,
and he's only in one night.
Yeah, 8 of them are on the second. Yeah, and it's true because it was. I know it's counted 1 and 2, but you're right. It was over like one long episode. JT has like 19 over his few episodes. The winners should, by the way, I feel like should
absolutely
get much. Sandra has 21 over her few episodes. Varner 21. Though Varner was a big character while he was in. So like a lot of these pre-merge characters, exception of Beast Mode Cowboy, where do you know who that is, by the way?
Never heard of him.
So it's Caleb, right?
No, I know who it is. I was
kidding. Yeah. Okay, on Big Brother, he's called Beast Mode Cowboy.
Yeah,
the whole thing. So everyone except for him actually was edited like with a lot of confessionals. Even Malcolm, I feel like got a lot of screen time.
Yeah,
fortunate boot.
It's a bad boot order for a season that already is hurting in terms of who we're rooting for. I'm surprised Brad only had 31. I thought he would have had more because I feel like he's such an integral part of that season.
Yeah, no, he is. It's almost like Brad ran. I know people argue he didn't run the show, but like in a lot of ways he kind of did.
Yeah.
Obviously he didn't run the show in the way that got him to win, but he did run the show in a way that definitely got him second place. He definitely played the second best game. Obviously. But you'd be shocked. Ozzy only has 8 confessionals.
Oh, I knew that. I knew he was nothing on that season.
What?
Because Ozzy's not a new school player. There's no need for Ozzy. No offense to Ozzy, but there's no need for Ozzy to be on our screen anymore because he's not a new school character. He doesn't fit there anymore.
No, yeah, Ozzy was definitely there. I didn't think just so they could have a name. Because I think South Pacific Ozzy is like kind of the end of an era for Ozzy. I think if he ever came back, it shouldn't have been this season. It should definitely be. I know everyone is now saying seasons 50 is going to be Legends. We'll see when we get there.
Yeah.
But that's really where if there's ever a Legend season, Ozzy is.
I don't think he wants to play again, though. And I think that's the biggest problem is I think Ozzy's so over it. Like, why should we sit down and watch him anymore? He doesn't want to be there.
Yeah. And it's just like Colby Donaldson in Heroes with Villains. Like, it's funny, but at the same time, it clearly doesn't really want to be there.
Yeah.
So I don't really want that on my screen either. But yeah, I'm surprised the confessionals here, like Sarah getting the most. Sarah almost has a Tony-esque. So Tony's like huge episode of Winners at War was like episode 11 where he had like 18 confessionals to set like a record. Sarah has something kind of similar here where her finale is not the episode where she has the most confessionals. She only has 9. Episode 10, she has 11. Like she just like has an episode where she just goes all out. And I don't recall everything what happened in the episode. Maybe that was the one where she votes out Michaela. I'm double checking now. But
it could be.
Episode 11 was a 2-booter. It was Andrea and Michaela.
Yeah, because she gets the advantage, then she plays the advantage. That seems like a good reason to make somebody
like an appropriate confessional count for someone who does all these big.
I would say,
yeah. So Sarah, honestly, it could. I think the season had potential to be better, even with how things played out. But it was edited in such a way where it's like we get to like final, 6, and it's like, well, I hope Suri wins.
I know. And the thing was, I was a huge Troyzan fan coming into the season, but he's so underedited that what are you going to do?
Same with Aubrey. Aubrey comes off Ko-Rong like hot. She comes back way too soon, clearly, as nobody, I think, wants to work with her. And so Aubrey's like a nobody in the season. Ty is basically the same person in Ko-Rong.
Yep.
Yeah, Ty's not going to win.
I know.
Ty's just not going to win. Impressive, though, that he got 3rd and 4th. But anyways, we're not talking here to talk about him.
Well, should we move on to 35 then?
Yeah, I know this is a highly debated season. I want to hear your thoughts on it first.
All right, so we're jumping over to season 35, which is Ben. Is it Driebergen? Driebergen. So we're jumping over to Ben Driebergen, season 35. You think I would have learned that in talking about him as much as I have over the course of my life now? One of the most controversial winners in the history of the show. There's just no doubt about it, because of the fire making challenge, because he was finding idols at night or, in the dark, kind of. A lot of people feel that it was rigged for him, which I 150 million% disagree with, because I don't think Survivor's a rigged game. Also, Chrissy winning would have been pretty great for the show. Let's be realistic. They would have liked to have a Chrissy win, maybe not Devin, but Chrissy would have been a great winner, and Chrissy would have beaten Devin based on everything we've heard postseason. Everybody just doesn't think Ben deserves it, and I just absolutely disagree.
Well, okay, let's let everyone. Do you want to address the whole thing first, or do you want to talk about his other? I feel like with the Ben, it's almost like you have to separate. Like, do you want to talk about from Final Four, or do you want to talk about the everything before Final Four? Because I'm willing to start anywhere, but where do you want to start? Because I'll start whichever.
Hey, I think you should lead this one, and you should lead the Wendell one, because I thought Ben and Wendell were going to win for a long time, or at least, Wendell or Dom. So I've talked about these two characters so much. I say you lead this where you want, and I'll come in for color commentary every 5 minutes.
All right. Well, I think what's important is that we need to start I think we do need to start with because as what anyone who's listening to this is just going to be thinking about this first. So let's talk about this first, is that from the Final Four on, that's what all the controversy is about. First off, please remember, Ben does not work for production. Ben does not hide the idols. Ben does not set up the twists. So it's not Ben's fault that anything happens. Okay? Ben did not hide the idols. Ben did not make the Final Four fire-making twist. So let's get off this whole Ben hate train. Ben earned his way to the Final Four. Now, of course, the discussion, as everyone knows, if you don't, that's okay. You're learning right now, is that the Final Four fire-making twist is a surprise this season, because it's the first time that it gets introduced. And basically what happens is Final Four immunity still exists. You win immunity, but you don't get to basically, in essence, pick who goes home, which is what most of the time happens at Final Four. Like, even though there are 3 other people voting, it's really the person with the immunity necklace kind of picking who goes. In this case, Chrissy wins on that, because Ben had the upside down U. By the way, iconic moment.
Iconic.
For modern Survivor, it's iconic. He loses on the upside down U at that final immunity challenge. And so he thinks he's going home. And then Survivor's like, actually, for the first time ever, Chrissy, here's an advantage. And Devin's like, this is not an advantage. Where she only gets to pick one person to go through to the end. And the other 2, no matter who she picks, has to make fire. And whoever wins fire, of course, makes Final 3. What do you think about, now, ignoring this season in particular, what do you think about this twist just in general? Like, what do you think?
It's old now. I mean, I was fine with it when it happened. I thought it was a good idea to maybe try to use it for 1 or 2 seasons and whatever. And I was excited about it at first. Personally, I believe that this finale is one of the best finales the show's ever had. And I said that when it happened, and I say it now, and people give me so much shit, and I just don't care. But I think that this is a twist that has been overblown at this point. I think that we get it. It was more exciting when we didn't know if we were going to get a Final Four fire making challenge or not. And the excitement of, are we going to see one this time, I think is better. Honestly, sure. I don't mind seeing Aubrey just get voted, or not Aubrey. I don't mind seeing Ty just get voted out of the game. I don't mind seeing, I don't know. Whoever, David Wright, just get voted out of the game. We see it enough where Aubrey versus Sydney still happens in season 32. We don't need to force it every time. So I think it's a stale twist at this point. I think it's something that they need to figure out a way to mix up. And I don't think it's really done any benefit for the show. I mean, the Sarah versus Tony was emotional and all of that, but I don't know. I don't think it's as I don't think it's as great as people. I don't think it's as bad as people think either. I just also don't think it's great.
Yeah. I think I agree. I like its introduction, but I don't think it should be just like a staple of the show to the end of time as well. Like what you're saying, like we've seen it play out. We've basically seen almost every scenario, shockingly, in like 6 seasons that could happen with this. You know, number one is of course Ben, who would have been your classic Rob Goddess had it been any other season survivor almost, winning the fire making, therefore winning the game. Now everyone needs to remember, just because he won fire making doesn't mean he wins the game. It's because of everything else he's done this season that got him to win the game. He doesn't win just because he won fire making. That is on Chrissy and Ryan to let Ben get to the end, because Ben should have been gone so many tribals before this. Ben getting the fire making twist. Okay, so not to get on a rant too much, but from season 3 of Survivor, there have been twists that have completely changed the game and helped the winner, intentional or unintentional, starting with the tribe swap in Africa. That helped Ethan so much because they got rid of Silas and completely flipped the numbers in a way that ensured that no matter what, his tribe was going to have, in a time where it's like ride your tribe to the end, his tribe was going to have the numbers till the very end. So Ethan was like guaranteed at that point, final 6 from the Ethan's on from the time they do that tribe swap, and they get Silas out. And it's just like, because T-Bird and Frank were like, yeah, I'm over Silas, let's get rid of him. Great, you know, but it unintentionally, it basically secures that one tribe is at the merge going to dominate. And that's exactly what happened. Unfortunate for T-Bird, but I think in the long run it works out because Ethan's a great guy. Go ahead.
I just want to say too, I think people forget because they always say that this one wasn't fair because nobody knew about it.
Nobody knew about the tribe swap.
Nobody knew about the tribe swap. Nobody knew about an idol when they first walked out there for Survivor Guatemala. Like, there's so many things throughout the history of time, and I understand. Nobody knew that there were. I don't even think anybody knew that there were freaking rocks that you had to draw at Final Four back in Marquesas. Jeff Probst didn't even know because it was the wrong move or something.
Vesepia's chances of winning go down so much if there's no rock draw.
Absolutely.
If it's straight up Kathy versus I believe, were they voting
for Nalia? It was who was it? It was Kathy versus Nalia because everybody drew rocks except Vesepia because she was immune.
Yeah, and without double checking right now, but I do know for a fact Kathy had multiple votes against her going to that Final Four. And how it worked historically is that whoever has the most votes in the previous 3 seasons goes home in a tie, or if no one has any votes or they're tied, then they do like this stupid quiz thing that we saw in Africa that doesn't really play well.
Yeah.
But anyways, nobody knew at that Final Four rock draw in Marquesas. The thing is, like, Survivor from season 3 through season 35 has always introduced twists and things to the game that we as the audience get to know about, and the players do not. Now, I think what's different here is that we as the audience did not know about this up front. Maybe if Jeff at the beginning of the season, during his whole thing about this season, blah 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 is going to happen, and the edge of extinction, and blah, blah, like things that players don't know about. But
I still don't think it would have made a difference. I think people still would have been mad. They would have just been complaining about it even earlier.
But I think though, and this is where I'm saying this is where I think production's fault really comes in, is that I think the twist is completely fine. I think it doesn't break the game. I think I agree with you, by the way, that I think we can get rid of it now. We've seen every great scenario that can happen from this twist. We've seen the Rob Goddess here win because the twist helped him. Chris Underwood, of course, beating Rick Devens. Like, I love Rick Devens, but what a game-changing moment. Not to quote Survivor, but and then Wendell and Dom, of course, he didn't do it, So we've had great moments with it, but it's just we have to remember Survivor's not fair, and it's been like this almost since the beginning. Unfair things happen all the time, and a great player adapts.
I think the biggest problem with this one is because it came in so late in the game, and Ben had found 3 hidden immunity idols to get the Final Four and all of that. And then it came in so late in the game. I think it just left a bad taste in people's mouths. I mean, we see these twists all the time. And the thing is, we complain about twists all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a thing we do.
The whole extortion thing in Winners at War should have been a terrible twist.
Terrible, but it worked because Tony's amazing.
Yeah.
But if you really start thinking about this, there's so many things that every twist, if you really think about it, every single twist in Survivor history is bullshit. Every single twist in Survivor history
that the players do not know about going into it
breaks the game. It breaks the game a little bit more every time. But at the same point, we're now at season 35 that we're talking about here. You got to know things are coming. And granted, there's nothing Chrissy could have done at Final Four. She thought she had done what she needed to. They had tried to vote him out at 6. They tried to vote him out at 5. They tried to vote him out at 7. He played idols every time, which is also what left a bad taste in people's mouths. But I always say, when your back's against the wall, do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Somebody else should have found an idol. And you can think production hid that for Ben.
No.
Production did not hide that for Ben. You can go and have your conspiracy theory and live that life if that's the life you want to live. But production did not hide those idols for Ben. And I know
Ryan, I forgot how you say his last name, but
Ulrich, yeah.
Ryan here, there you go, has confirmed that none of these idols were hidden. In like Ben just worked harder. He came out and basically. Ben worked harder. He went out and found these idols. They weren't hiding idols where he slept, which I know is like the boat one is like people argue it's where he slept. No, like Ben was just out working harder because Ben was hungry. Ben was out there to win, and basically because he was on the bottom, like you said, Phil, he was just more hungry to go out and do these things that anyone, by the way, no one was restricted from doing exactly what he was doing. Everyone had the same opportunity. It doesn't matter whether you're male, female, short, tall. All of these things were available to you. Ben just was the one who was like the hungriest, I guess.
No, it's 100. You're 100% right. I think you're 100% right, and I think that's something that people just miss, and it's because Chrissy doesn't win that people are more annoyed, and Ben's the tall guy who's a beast, and production loves him, so they can tell the military story and blah blah blah. Which like, since when did being in the military? Since when is it a bad thing? I don't know when that's
never
happened.
Actually helped anybody's story.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, and I don't know why that's like a negative in terms of like when you're watching, like, I hate him. He served our nation's military. What a bad guy. Yeah. What a scumbag. But like, it's this really, really just like weird situation. And like, here you go. This is what I love. I thought they hid it in his hat. They hid it in his bag. They didn't do either of those things.
Yeah.
Neither one of those things were happening, and I'm pretty sure that those are jokes, but at the same time, if they're not, those are things that people really, really believe around the internet. And what also didn't help Ben's game here is that people who were former Survivor players started saying that there's no way he would have found them the way he did and all that. And also, this was coming from people who like hadn't really found idols. Or like had maybe found one in like a different situation. Maybe if they looked at night, maybe they would find one, because I'm pretty sure when Davey and Nick Wilson get up to find an idol, and I think they find one, nobody's like, oh, how did they do such a thing? Sure. Davey literally says, early bird gets the worm. And they go around in half pitch blackness. And if you know what you're looking for, which at that point he does know what he's looking for, even if it's really, really dark and you can't see your hand in front of your face, as that sun starts to come up in any way, shape, or form, you can start to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially, and we saw Tony on Winners at War, of course, working for like what he said, 26 days every night. I'm not sure if it was really every night, but I'm sure it was a lot of the nights where he's looking for idols. But Tony, by the way, anyone, I already plugged this earlier. I got a massive Tony video up. So if you really want to,
keep plugging it because I got to step away for 1 second. No, I'm serious. Okay. So keep plugging it because I'll be back.
That's fine. But with Ben here, I think what's so crucial is that Ben is just another person who, I think Ben's game may not translate as well to older Survivor, but Ben is playing season 35 of Survivor. So Ben is essentially playing the best modern version of Survivor. He played the best heroes versus healers versus hustlers game, whereas of course this exact game doesn't translate to Marquesas or Pearl Islands or Palau, but he's not playing those seasons. He's playing this season, so I think that was probably important to mention as we're waiting for Phil to get back. I don't want to talk about other things yet, but basically for everyone who's listening, it's just I understand the like disgust for like maybe how Ben got there, but please don't hate Ben. Production should have, from the very beginning, just told everyone. And at Final Four, we have a new game-changing twist where the final, two people have to make fire. If they said, I think if they had just said that in the opening of the season, that would, I think, would help alleviate a lot of our like, oh, the game's rigged. But you didn't miss anything, Phil. I was just explaining how I think that production just said in the very beginning. and like the opening like 3 minutes of the episode where they are the show where they always do their explanation of the season. You know, we're gonna have a game changing Final Four fire making twist or whatever they want, however they want to pitch it.
Yeah.
I think it would have helped a lot of us as the audience think that it's not rigged. Now we could have still been like, I don't like this twist, but it wouldn't have been like, oh, they just rigged it for Ben. Like, bro, this season was already shot.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's
bad on production to not tell us.
It's the same reason we feel sick to our stomachs with the Outcast twist, because we don't know it's coming and it sucks. But then again, in Edge of Extinction, we know it's coming. The players don't know it's coming, and it still sucks.
It sucks, but it's not like, oh, you know, this is like, it's not like the Outcast twist in Pearl Islands where it's like nobody knew it and everyone's like, you know, the episode's called What the, and I think that's probably the only appropriate title for those episodes for the Outcast twist.
Agreed.
What the? All these people were voted out. They had confessionals on their way out the door. We'll get there when we get there for that season, but or for the Edge of Extinction season.
Yeah. We'll talk about that.
Ben, so we've kind of talked about Final Four. We should talk about everything else Ben did, because he did a lot up until he had to start playing idols all the time.
Well, and I think the biggest move that he made in the show was convincing everybody to let him do the mission accomplished in the double boot episode, in the back-to-back episode.
Yeah,
when Joe goes home. It's brilliant, and not for nothing, everybody wants to say, oh, what a great move by everybody. I think it was Joe Mena said it. We've had a couple other people on here say it. You gave Ben that move, this epic, great, phenomenal move. You gave him that ammunition. That's unbelievable to let him play double agent like that and let him get all the credit for that. Of course, he's going to get votes at the end of the game. It's an absolutely phenomenal move, obviously, by Ben. It's a good move by everybody else involved, but it's really Ben's move because he's the one who benefits from it.
And you know what? Ben, like, I know, you know, over the course of Survivor, I can't think of a lot of times where people like had to act, or if they did, it's like, this person's up to something. Like the most famous, I think, is in like Heroes vs. Villains, where Boston Rob's like, it's getting the best of me, Jeff, which is clearly an acted moment by Boston Rob because they missed whatever actually happened. But as from what I understand, but like here, Ben's like, he's has to act like a double agent, and maybe it was easier because he was a double agent, but he does a great job, and they do hand him that move, and it's like such a season changing move though. It's not like some minor thing. No,
it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. It's this move that literally shifts the entire perspective of everything that's going to move forward in the game. And if I'm not mistaken, it is the vote right before when they decide, you know what, we should get rid of Ben every time. So again, when you go back to this, I understand that Ben finds 3 straight immunity idols, and he gets the fire making challenge. I understand all 4 of those things. Yeah. However, you had so many chances to get rid of him and not let him build up a resume that I can only feel so bad for people, because it's not like he was some challenge beast. In fact, Ben doesn't win a single individual immunity the entire season,
and not in Winners of War either, by the way, because he gets almost to the end of that season.
Yeah. So you had a lot of time to get rid of this guy. And I understand maybe you're like, oh, I can get him later. But at the same time, I cannot feel bad for players playing Survivor nowadays, pretty much from season 31 on, or 30 on, because you can look at Mike Holloway. But I cannot feel bad for players who say, well, get rid of him next time. Because you know at this point that next time the island could explode, and somehow that's a twist Survivor was planning to have. Like, you just never know anymore. So I think that Ben, like, you know, I think Chrissy played a phenomenal game. Yeah. I think Chrissy's great. I think she's not as good of a social player as people think she is. And I don't really think that that's necessarily a gender thing. I just think that she came across a little just blunt to people, which I don't think they liked, because they didn't like Joe Mena on this season either. And I'm not saying she was at the level of Joe Mena, but I think she was just a little
gender comparison. Joe also.
Yes, exactly. So I think that that's what hurt her. I think she's a great player, though. And I think if Chrissy were to ever play Survivor again, watch out, because she would be your next female winner. I really think she's that good. And I think that's what bothers people, because they're like, well, screw Ben. We want Chrissy. We want Chrissy. If he beats Ryan and Devin at Final 3, I don't think anybody cares.
So I'm not fully on this train, but it's under the assumption that if Devin makes Final 4 and doesn't get beat at the fire making, that he wins the season. He does. And if that's true, that means Chrissy was guaranteed to lose no matter what when she
Chrissy beats Devin.
You know,
Chrissy beats Devin. From everything we've heard post game, Chrissy beats Devin.
It was I don't know if that was just like a Reddit thing, but it was like, it seemed like it had a lot of steam behind it that Devin would have won a final tribal.
It made sense because as an audience, we really liked Devin. We thought he made some good moves, but based on what we've heard from other members of that jury, they didn't respect Devin's game as much as the audience respected Devin's game. Sure. And so had Devin, because I remember at the time, that was the big thing was Devin's the one who was robbed. It would have been Devin. It would have been Devin. It would have been Devin. It was Chrissy's game that got robbed there because I think Chrissy probably wins 4-3-1 or something along those lines because I think it's a 5-2-1 final vote. People forget Ryan Ulrich gets a vote here. We have the same outcome essentially as Survivor China, which is crazy. Like, think about that. This season has that outcome. Yeah. So you know, I do think that Chrissy probably ends up beating Devin. I think that was just one of those. As an audience, we like Devin a little bit more.
I think I know I said it during Millennials versus Gen X when we talked about that, but I think Millennials versus Gen X, you know, Adam has this great story. It's gonna play. It plays really well with the cameras, but it also is gonna play well whenever like I make my video on him. But same with Ben here. Like Ben, because he's so open, Ben kind of does the same thing here, where it's like I don't know if it hurts him at all because my recollections, I don't remember him being like, well, he had PTSD or he has PTSD and he has a family he talks about all the time. He's from the military, so I got to vote him out or I don't like him. I don't think that was like as big of a factor, but I think it definitely helps him in the end because he has like, it's not like something, it's not like Adam where he like waited till the end to tell everyone. It's like Ben, like all season from like the very beginning is like, oh yeah, I got a wife and 2 kids and I was in the military, you know. Ben's just like super open and similar to Adam in that sense. And I think it really helps the audience connect with Ben. I'm a little bit biased because I was in the military as well. I don't have PTSD, but so of course that helps me connect with him. But I think Ben has like this great personal story that I think makes, I know people want to argue he's like a bottom winner, but like if you want to take into account character as well as strategy, I think Ben is actually top half because he tells his story. Where I feel like people like Vesepia played an amazing strategic game, but I feel like I didn't get like a great sense of who Vesepia was. In terms of like we got moments of Vesepia and I love Vesepia, but like Vesepia didn't have like the story over the course of the season that like Ben does or Adam does. And it could, of course, it's a totally different time, and that's just like the one that stands out in my mind with Marquesas. But
well, and I'll also go as far as to say like I think Ben is a bottom tier winner. I just think that like the hate he gets, it's kind of if anybody listened to my podcast with Adam Jumba, we were talking about like, well, Fabio's underrated. That doesn't mean I think Fabio is a top 10, top 20, top 30 winner even. But I think there's so much hate there. There's so much like they suck. And I think that's what happens with Ben is there's so much unnecessary, like they're the worst. It's like, he's really not though. And like, you know, Adam will tell you the same thing. And I'm talking about Adam Klein now, you know, Adam will say in the game, he couldn't stand Ben, but outside of the game, Ben's one of the nicest guys you're going to meet. And it's the truth. And I think that that's just something like he got a lot of hate after this. And I think we're in that era now. I think from Michelle on,
media era. Yeah.
It's the Michelle on wins. Every single one is just nonstop hatred. It's just nonstop. And it's like I know I'm kind of harping on this, but again, like when you see it every day, all the time with the social media shit and all that, you see like the Michelle win and then the Adam win and then the Sarah win and then the Ben win. And Wendell really doesn't have it because him and Dom were so revered on that season. Yeah. And then even Nick Wilson, people aren't sure about that one. And Chris Underwood, obviously. It just keeps going. And then Tommy Sheehan, his fiance is getting death threats. Yeah, his fiance is getting death threats because he sucks. And you see all this and it's just like, people got to chill the hell out. Like you just got to chill out and you got to calm down and you got to like understand that Ben is a real human being who went out and played Survivor. And whether you like it or not, that he found 3 straight idols and then had the fire making challenge, it happened. And he goes home to his real life. And you being what you are makes you a bad person, not him and not Survivor production, no matter what they did or what you think they did.
I do think, by the way, we saw the hate train of social media, which I do think is a factor, and we haven't really talked about to this point, but is a factor I think for a lot of people after they play. But really, I think it's a factor for him in Winners at War, and it's part of why he sacrifices himself to Sarah in Winners at War. And I'm sure he's done a podcast, maybe he's come out and said something, but my understanding is that he just didn't want to like have the obviously the like oh, I know I lost, but now I have to sit here and actually like truly wonder, did I lose to Tony? But also I think he just didn't want to deal with the hate train of people.
Yeah.
Saying how much he sucks. I think he would have rather gone out, and he did. He basically went out when he wanted to, knowing that he wasn't going to win, and he didn't want to deal with all the hate from people. I think actually him sacrificing himself when Winners of War, while not great gameplay, of course, actually maybe helps people's thoughts on him as a person, which is all he really cared about at that point.
I kind of agree. I think it upped his reputation while it downplayed his actual game. But let's because we're at the hour and a half mark here. Let's do the confessional so that we can jump into.
So obviously he has the most. Yeah. I'll give you that.
Does he? No.
Yeah. I feel like we've been talking up Ben so much trying to explain. I do really like Chrissy this season.
Yeah.
Regardless of the fact that she loses 7-2, I do like Chrissy. So, or 7-2-1, I guess, is Ryan to get a vote from Devin. Mm-hmm. But no, Chrissy's still a great character. We're just here more so to say that we don't like that people attack Ben so much. We wish Ben would get more credit. Ben only played the game that Ben was able to play, like on the season that he played on. We say that all throughout this whole series, like the season you play on with the rules you have or the rules you have to play by. You're not playing by Marquesas or Palau or Micronesia rules. You're playing by by the way, the names of these seasons have gotten so long.
Oh, it's too much.
We went from Borneo to Here's for Steelers versus Hustlers. Like, they couldn't even spell it right in like the Winners at War, like the stuff.
I know.
It's ridiculous.
It's terrible.
It is terrible. So anyways, confessional count. Yeah. How many do you think Ben has?
I'm going to say 74.
70, actually.
There you go.
He does have back-to-back finale in the episode before with 12 each. It really helps a lot because before that he was pretty consistent. Second most is Chrissy. What do you think she has?
56.
51, followed by Ryan with 49. Devin 41, so it actually went sequentially, and then you have Lauren Rimmer with 34, Dr. Mike with 33. So it's actually pretty well edited with the
edited season, yeah.
But once you hit JP and go down, it's actually like very like all over the place.
Except for Jessica Johnston and Allie, which make no sense because we all thought that they were going to somehow make it further in the game, and they both are gone before Final 10.
It was very uneven from JP below, but from from Joe Mena up, it's actually really. So I do think if you go back and rewatch it and just accept the fact these twists exist, it's actually probably a really great season to rewatch.
I actually don't mind this season. I know a lot of people don't like it, and I think it's because of the twists and all of that, but I actually kind of liked HHH, and I know Fairplay always says it's like the worst season he's ever seen and stuff. But since when do we take Fairplay seriously? Just kidding, Fairplay. I love you. I take you very seriously. But no, I think it's interesting. I actually really like this season. I really like the finale. I know that's not a popular opinion, but it's the truth.
What's interesting is this season has less confessionals than Millennials versus Gen X, more than Game Changers at 430. But I would say, even though it is heavy Ben, and it's understandable, but if you can just accept that Ben wins this season, I think it's actually a really good season just to watch.
I agree because the whole time is it going to be Lauren? Is it going to be Devin? Is it going to be Ron? Like, you really don't know who's going to win the season until Ben starts finding the idols, and then it's like, this is about to be Ben.
Yeah,
it takes a little while.
Yeah, and I think, and really though, but it's such a roller coaster. Once Chrissy wins that Final Four immunity, and I know it sucks that it was a surprise to them and to us, but like if you can accept that, it's like a roller coaster of emotions. You're like, oh no, Ben's out, because at this point they want you to root for Ben because Ben's gonna win and he has this personal story. But you're like, oh no, Ben's gonna lose. He's the Rob Goddess of the season. But then the Final Four fire making, you're like, if you're rooting for Ben, you're like, yeah, yes. But if you're like rooting for anybody else, you're like, oh my gosh, how do we get rid of this roach?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I absolutely agree.
I think it's just a great roller coaster of emotions this season, because the next season we're about to talk about, I felt very neutral about.
This is the worst season of the bunch with the who I personally believe
stories
doesn't necessarily. No, I guess that's a lie. Maybe Sarah's game is better, but in terms of in my top 100 rankings, I actually have Wendell ranked higher than Sarah, which will surprise a lot of people. But a lot of that has to do with the first time they played, who they beat that first time too. And Sarah's coming back, didn't have a huge threat. We're jumping into Survivor Ghost Island to talk about Wendell Holland, who wins the first ever tie at Final Tribal Council. He knocks off Dom Abate, who I think is probably the third or fourth greatest player to sit at Final Tribal. He could arguably be the best runner-up in the history of the show. I don't think that that's a very controversial opinion. Maybe him,
I think
maybe
it's the best
Russell.
runner-up of a newbie season because
Yeah,
you can't
Boston
forget Heroes
Rob.
versus Villains.
Yeah, Boston Rob. You had Parvati. You're right. But in terms of a newbie season, Dom, I think so. It moves Wendell way up because for Wendell to be able to defeat Dom, in my opinion, just makes Wendell so much better. And so talking about Wendell, we just saw him on Winners at War. He's kind of all over the place. The edit's really bad to him because of the whole Michelle thing, which
It's like they needed a villain, so they made him one.
so they made him one, which he's not because he's not in his first season. And we see him on the first season, and he does a really good job of this season of navigating things with his social game. And I think that's what Wendell's ultimate strength is. And one thing I'll just throw out, because I know it's not really something that happens on season 36, but the fact that we interviewed Wendell after season 40, right after the George Floyd thing, he was talking about like all the people on the island and how like he would talk to them about certain things. And I think he was saying about Sarah, who, you know, is a cop.
Yeah.
And they're not going to agree on everything. That's never going to happen. But I think it shows how social and like not even just as players, but just as people,
Sure.
Wendell and Sarah are, that they find common ground, or at least the way they talked about it was that they were able to find a common ground and have these discussions and things like that. And I think that's what resonates with people with Wendell is just, he's a real guy. Like he is just, Wendell is Wendell. And that is what you're going to get every time you sit down with him. And I think that's what ultimately gets him the win over the person who arguably plays the better Survivor game. But Wendell plays the social game phenomenally. And then at the end of the game, cleans up with Laurel because he gives her the idol. He sits down at final fire making, and it's Dom's mistakes that he can have. A lot of great moves from Wendell. He just plays a quieter game than Dom did, which made it harder to see his game throughout this terrible, terrible season of Survivor.
I think this is 4 seasons, and this may be the only time I feel strongest about, where it's like, I feel like we now have 4 seasons back to back to back, where I feel like the winners won because of their social game. Like they got to the end because of maybe due to other things, especially with Ben, but they won the game. The part that we joke that Russell can't figure out, at least when he played, that, you know, you can get to the end, but can you actually convince the jury to vote for you? We have Adam convincing the jury to vote for him over Ken and Hannah. Easily does that because of his social game. You know, even though Ken did all those things, Adam's over here getting credited and being viewed as the better player. And then we got Sarah once again over Brad. You know, Brad's doing all those things, but Sarah got that social game. And then Ben, how does Ben beat Chrissy and Ryan when like clearly Chrissy and Ryan were like controlling the game, you know, for the most part? Ben has the better social game. That people like Ben more. People want to vote for Ben. They want to give him $1 million. And here we are. Wendell squeaks out a win, but it's like the whole time we're all, if you watch a season, you're like, oh my gosh, Laurel. I remember Laurel like every week's like, this time the gloves are coming off. I'm flipping on them.
Laurel's the worst.
But she's like, I'm taking the gloves off this time and I'm going to get them real good. And she never does it, of course. But it's like the whole time, it's like you don't realize how essential Laurel is truly going to be when the vote is 5-5. And then it's like, and they, by the way, they did say during the Game Changers finale reunion that like if there ever is a tie, that the third person on the
go look up if you go and watch my Survivor Cambodia finale predictions, I had said that there could be a tie, and everybody called me a moron and said I don't know the rules and blah blah blah. And if any of you are still listening, ha 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 ha, because I think Jeff had actually mentioned it even earlier than that, where he had said in like an interview with Dalton Ross or something that if there was ever a tie, the third place person would cast the vote. And we didn't actually know that until it comes out in Survivor Ghost Island, but people had thought they were going to make fire against each other and other
Game Changers reunion, he says that, and that's before they even shot the season.
Oh, no, I know that, but I'm saying I think it had come out even earlier than that as well. I don't think that was the first time.
Yeah, it's just like the whole time you just don't realize like how essential this relationship between him and Laurel. Obviously, it gets him to the end and gets Dominic to the end as well, but it comes back to like Dominic in the butt when it's up to Laurel who wins, and it's like everyone knows who won the game at that point. There's I cannot imagine a single person on this cast went into watching the season wondering who won.
No, I know. I know. No, they all knew. And so it's like Wendell's game against social, and I actually think what you just said, I think the whole 30s could be defined by social game, except for Mike Holloway and Chris Underwood.
Which is so crazy because it's so defined by twists, but it's like, but that's not, twists don't win you the game. Twists just help you get to the end, but not win the game.
Yeah, because I mean, Dom definitely plays the more twisty game in Ghost Island, but he doesn't win.
No. And I think it's interesting, especially since we're here talking about Wendell, I think it's okay to talk about Dominic almost in the same breath along the way because they work so hand in hand. They're a power couple. Season 36, nobody learned the lesson from season 8, I guess. People did, but they just couldn't get the majority to vote with them as Kellen. Well, Kellen kept being Navidi strong or whatever. But anyways, getting Wendell and Dominic should have been broken up a lot sooner. But once Chris Noble goes, it really feels like, oh, Wendell and Dominic are going to run the show here.
Yeah.
Because Chris, by the way, the whole Chris thing is great, where he calls him a garbage rapper, and then a Winners at War on the Ponderosa, he's doing the same rap that Chris did.
Well, and that's what's great about Wendell though is even when he's ripping apart Chris, he's still doing it to the point of he knows Chris that well. Where Chris, I don't think Chris actually turns around and votes for him. I think, because Chris ends up voting for Dom, but it's still one of those things where he knows him so well that it's not like a personal attack. It's one of those things that really is just hey, this is the kind of guy you are right now. What's fascinating about this season, I've had this talk with a lot of people. It's one of those seasons where we always complain when the winner is too obvious. And this was one of those seasons with an obvious winner, except it wasn't. It was an obvious pair.
Yeah.
So the entire time from when Chris Noble goes home, we know the final two or the winner of the season is going to be Wendell or Dom. We just don't realize they're both going to sit in the final three next to each other.
You think one's going to get robbed at final four?
That's what you think. And even when Wendell goes into that fire making challenge, you're like, well, Angela's going to somehow beat Wendell. And it's just going to be Dom, Angela, and Laurel. And so that's what's so crazy about this season is while it seems like a very predictable season, it is, but there's still two players doing it the entire time. And I know Dom ended up with a lot more confessionals than Wendell because he was a lot louder character. But another thing that really hurt Dom was when he insults Sebastian at the final 6, I believe it is. When Sebastian goes home, that really kills Dom because Sebastian turns and votes for Wendell. Chelsea votes for Wendell. Kellen votes for Wendell. Angela votes for Wendell. Those were all players that weren't necessarily going to vote for Wendell at that time, but in that moment thought that what Dom had done was just too negative.
And the thing is that's what's super interesting is what I was going to mention. I got sidetracked, but and I know a lot of people have noticed this, but if you haven't, the jury, the first 5 on the jury all vote for Dominic, but then the second 5, the second half of the jury all vote for Wendell, including Laurel, if you want to count her as well as a jury member. You should, I guess. So it's the first Dominic, I don't know what exactly happened, but maybe it was exactly what you said, but it's the first 5 all voted for Dominic. There's no really, in my mind, rhyme or reason between those 5. But then you get from Chelsea Townsend, by the way, Purple Chelsea.
Yeah, terrible.
Chelsea, I got screwed, man. She got 4 confessionals, by the way. Not to get
She's also, not for nothing though. She just wasn't interesting. She got 4 confessionals, but also she should have never been on the show.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. She
likes coffee though.
This is a very pretty cast, I'll say. That's what I will say. Which is, I think, we talked about the casting team changed after Edge of Extinction. But yeah, so I think it is from Chelsea on. Everyone votes for Wendell, and it has to be social because Dominic plays a game where I think the longer you're sitting on the jury, the further you are removed from your relationship with Dominic. It's Dominic's playing a better game. But the closer you are, I think the less time you spend on the jury, it's well, Wendell was much cooler to hang out with. Wendell's much nicer. Wendell wasn't, doing the thing that you said that Dominic just did. I think things like that affect
absolutely
how jury members vote. They're not just sitting there with a stat sheet going who did the most things. They're sitting there going, well, how is my relationship with this person? Yes, the things that they did count. We see that come up in Edge of Extinction, especially when we get there next week. We'll talk about that. But it's not just about the stat sheet. It's about how's my relationship with them? How do they treat others? Stuff like that. What matters to you is So Wendell squeaks out a win over Dominic, and I think it's such an exciting thing that happened because when it happens, Jeff's reading it on the island. It's what is this, Survivor Borneo?
Yeah. Well, and so going back to how you were talking about, he gets the last 5 people who were voted out of the game all vote for him. Another thing too about Wendell is he wins the last 2 individual immunity challenges.
Yes.
And his back
another one, but he wouldn't say Jeff's name.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why he's doing it in Winners at War when he became a cocky asshole. We don't like Wendell anymore. He sucks. But no, it really is interesting though how he wins the last two. And his back wasn't necessarily against the wall, I won't say. It wasn't like, oh, he was going to go home over Donathan or any of that, but it took the possibility out.
Yeah.
It made it so that there was no possible way you could ever get rid of Wendell, and he was just going to sit at final three. And I guess when I say he won the last two, he obviously doesn't win the last one because he goes.
Yeah, well, and I think we need to mention how the previous season it was a surprise Final Four fire make twist for them, and kind of in a way for us. This season, even though it wasn't said from the beginning, and we're still doing the Final Four fire making challenge. I do think that I do remember this specifically that Jeff said during the Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers finale that they're bringing it back for Ghost Island. So while it was not like in the edited show, it was told us that it was going to come back.
And it was told to them as well, I believe. I don't believe it made the edit, but I think they all knew that this was going to be another thing.
Yeah, because the way things play out, you're like, obviously they had to know because nobody was like, this is not an advantage, you know?
Yeah.
when the fire making comes up. So I think this is like a great precursor to what we see at the Edge of Extinction with, Dominic should have gone up against Wendell. Would Dominic beat Wendell at fire making? I don't know. I really don't. Wendell does pretty good, and he's like over there being cocky. But it's like a fun cocky. It's not like a jerk cocky like they try to make it into in another season. But yeah, I'm gonna click.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna click this comment too because Karen Barahona said I miss hearing Alexa's opinion. And since we are talking about Wendell, I will give you Alexa's opinion. Oh, he's so dreamy. I love him. He's my favorite winner. That's it. That's what I got. I just know in Ghost Island, Alexa was all about Wendell, and she was all about Wendell going through even a Winners at War, and she really liked
a very pretty cast. Like, there's no doubt.
Oh, it's a gorgeous cast. There's no doubt about it. But one thing I will say, well, it's also the youngest cast they've ever assembled. But I will say with Wendell coming into this season, and I'll give this one. This one's for you, Karen, because I know Alexa can't be here tonight. But Karen, this is for you. I had predicted that Dom would win the season. Alexa had predicted that Wendell would win the season. This was preseason.
Yeah.
We get to the finale. I change my mind and say Wendell's going to win. Alexa changes her mind and says Dom's going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, stick with what you got unless it's wrong. You know what I mean? So I switched up my mind, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because I know Alexa, I still can't ever let her live it down because it's like me with Michelle going into the finale of Korong. I was like, no, she's still going to win it. I mean, it's not likely, but it's going to happen. Yeah. You got to stick to your guns when it's the person who's going to win because if you're the one who changes, it's not a good look.
Yeah, I will admit though that out of the 4 seasons, I know Game Changers is like not uber interesting to watch in the second half because the boot order that happened. This season to me is probably like the hardest one of these 4 to rewatch because
it's a bad season.
It's just like I'm so tired. Every week it's like Navidi strong. This week I'm taking off my gloves. The
problem was. And the thing is, like, if you meet the Ghost Island cast, most of them are great. Most of them are really fun and everything like that. But the problem was the pre-merge was all the people that the editors actually built up as players and people and characters that we could fall for. Whereas everybody post-merge, how do you not make Sebastian into the next Ozzy? Like, how do you not do that? How do you not edit Kellen so that she's more likable when in real life, Kellen's unbelievably likable? Like, what are you doing?
I remember Jeff Probst saying going into the season that, and I don't know if he says this if he gives these predictions before the game actually happens or if he says it afterwards, like here's who I would have predicted, because he normally doesn't predict the winner, but this time he predicted if he had to pick a male he would pick Wendell, he said, and if he had to pick a female he would have picked Kellen, he said, because Kellen has a very strong social, like I remember I used to make fun of this because I think it's such a funny line to like say out loud, but she's like, empathy is my superpower. I remember that was like her thing. And in a way it's like, but like it's like a funny thing to say, but at the same time it's like, you know what, the empathizing with people is how a lot of people connect with others. Like it doesn't work for everybody, but it works for a lot of people.
Well, and go ahead. I want to interrupt and I want to say this because obviously like we all know the story of Kellen during COVID where she's in Italy, like staying with some random person but again, it goes back to the whole empathy and being like not just anybody could do that for however long that was going to be and not knowing and all of that. Like that takes a certain type of person. And I just don't think we saw that type of person from Kellen on this season, unfortunately. And it ends up being why it's the Wendell and Dom show. And we're just waiting to find out which one of them is going to ultimately pull out the victory. But it's a shame because there are other good characters on this season that could make Dom and Wendell's win even better. But because we don't see these characters, like people want to knock Wendell because like, well, he beat Dom, but who else did he beat? I say screw that. Put him in the top 20.
Yeah. No, Wendell, considering who he beat here in the finale, I think it says a lot about the strength of his win. I think it was a mistake bringing Dom to the end. And it was definitely a mistake for Dom bringing him to the end because Dom had the chance to get rid of Wendell. But yeah, I agree. I think Wendell has a very strong win here. It's just a shame that the entire season as a whole isn't as interesting because it's like makes for a harder rewatch. Even though I think the concept of Ghost Island, by the way, was really botched. And not just because it's another island and we have 42 minutes every Wednesday to watch, but really just like I felt like, and I'm double checking here, but like the actual Ghost Island twist, a lot of times it was go there, smash and earn. There's no game for you. What am I doing here?
Yeah, it's a waste of our. Why did we just watch those 20 seconds?
What am I even doing here? There should be a game every time, and I'm double checking. So, okay. So the very first episode, Jacob Derwin, of course, has the
legacy.
Yeah. Jonathan Hurley, no advantage available for this episode. The next episode, Chris Noble, no advantage. Kellen Bechtold gets the option, says no. By the way, probably smart for her. So we now have 3 people back to back where there's been no game or they just chose not to. And then Stephanie Johnson, no advantage available. Like what? No, every earn should have a stupid game in it. If we're gonna do this, let's do it. Yeah. Because after that, then there's no one sent to Ghost Island for the next episode. So now we have this huge twist that's supposed to be like define the season, and we've now had 5 straight episodes, like 5 episodes, 5 people in a row, 5 episodes / 5 people in a row. Where it's like nothing's happened, and then in the second half of the season, it becomes a thing and it like picks up. But it's like they botched this. Every single time you go to Ghost Island, there should be something to do. It doesn't mean somebody should win something. There should be something to do. If we're gonna do it, let's do it. But yeah, I did. But what I did like about this season, and I know we've kind of like. Wendell played a great game, everyone. He played a great social game.
Well, it's hard because everybody knows Wendell's game because we just watched him Winners at War. His arc was he kind of unlike Dom when the tribe swapped, he ended up on the better tribe, but was on the wrong side of the numbers. And him and Dom were actually together on that. But Wendell was the one who didn't realize that Morgan was going home, whereas I think Dom was actually the person who voted for Morgan. Actually, no, Dom and Wendell both voted for Angela. And so it was Laurel, Donathan, Libby, and James who voted for Morgan, which is this crazy move. And now Wendell and Dom are on the wrong side of the votes. But after that, Wendell and Dom are able to rebound. And how do they work? They do it together. They go through the entire game together, and they play 2 differing games, but both of them play the game they wanted to play perfectly. And I'm happy Wendell won. I really am. Like, I think Dom would have been a great representative of the season 2, but I think Wendell, it's kind of like Ethan Zahn back in season 3. He proved that the good guy who doesn't have to play the in-your-face strategic game can still win the game. And I think there's a lot of strategy from Wendell, but I think ultimately it's his social game. And that's the thing that we all love about Wendell just in the community. Those who like know him or have, interacted with him in any way, it is the person that Wendell is that everybody really loves.
Yeah, I think Wendell is a good winner. He's definitely a top half winner. He plays a great social game. Here we are in season 36, learning the same lessons from season 1 where Richard Hatch won over Kelly. It's about your social game. It's about, it's not like who you know, but it's more like, how you know them, I guess, is more important because, everyone should know everyone. Unless it's an Edge of Extinction season where it's potentially you don't know everyone. Whole different, that's next week. But anyways, I think but what I did really like about this season and the idea they had, and I wish they just got rid of the island part, was bringing back these relics from past Survivor, like Eric Reichenbach's necklace he gives an alley. Like, yeah, man, like a season where like we bring all these like basically advantages or like the stick. It's just a stick.
Yeah.
Stick. Things like that. I'm like, yeah, this is like a great idea. Like we're giving, stuff we're mentioning past Survivor while like being like we're honoring past Survivor in a way. Even if we're bringing up something like a joke, like the stick.
And we saw a great moment because of this when we had Michael Yerger pretend that the immunity idol he had, because it was James's, was actually worth 2, and it brings in these interesting concepts.
And I like that part of the Ghost Island twist. I didn't like the actual island, so I like the
execution wasn't well done.
I should call it Ghost Idol.
Yeah.
Survivor Ghost Idol. That would have been a great season in terms of twists. But I also remember, not to pontificate, I don't know if that's the right word too much, but I remember during the reunion, once again, we had to bring up Eric Reichenbach, give him his necklace.
Yeah.
Except now Jeff finally admits that maybe the move wasn't as dumb as he originally thought, but no, it was.
Yeah. That's the one that is the dumbest move.
Because then we get to Winners at War, and Parvati's like, remember when they did the whole episode before the premiere? Remember when we tricked Eric? That was so funny. He was so dumb. And it's like, oh, so we haven't learned anything.
I still can't believe that CBS actually had Eric come out on stage after Karamoan because he hated them so much. I'm surprised, and especially with how James felt after, Heroes versus Villains. It was funny to see James and Eric out there together. It was one of my favorite moments.
I don't really watch the show that much anymore.
And he said that, and it was like, wow, my heart just broke. But also, like, Jeff, how do you not know this coming in? That's like if I were to be like, hey, Wes, come on to my podcast, and then be like, hey, so what'd you think of this season? You're like, I never saw it. It's like, well, maybe I should have interviewed you before, huh?
It'd be more like, if you like brought my wife on here to talk about like Borneo and she hasn't seen Borneo, I'd be like, bro, maybe you should have asked her that before you brought her out.
Should have done that. Yeah, probably would have been a good move.
Done some homework.
What's the confessional count on this season? I know that the confessional count's a good one. Or good one in terms of how bad it is.
This is one of the worst seasons in terms of the editing. And once again, for anyone who's listening, you can look this is a very Googleable thing. I didn't go through and count these confessionals. Just look up confessional count and type in the season name that you want to know the confessional count of, and you'll very easily find it. For American Survivor, it's harder for Australian. So this season, they have a total confessional count for the entire season of 390. Which
I'm not surprised.
Horrific. Eyeballing it, we have not had a season with this low of confessionals since, I'm going to double check because there's been a lot of poorly edited seasons over the years, since One World, if that tells you a lot. Yeah. We've not had, this is the lowest amount of confessionals since One World. So, yeah, with 390 in mind, what do you think Dominic got? We'll start with that.
I think Dom was 70.
Okay, Dominic got 67, so close. What did Wendell get?
45.
39 actually.
Yeah.
And by the way, once again, we kind of forgot to talk about does Ben's game win again? So we probably should do that when we talk about Wendell here.
Ben's game doesn't win again, I don't think.
Ben's game doesn't win again. I think it was a lot of luck dependent.
Yeah.
I think Wendell's game in this season wins again. I think we keep thinking that a power couple can't do it again, but if we're in season 36 doing it, I guess anything's possible.
Well, and I want to say this too.
And Winners at War, of course, power couple.
And I was going to say with Wendell, don't ever think that he can't win Survivor again because of what you saw edited in Winners at War. He could easily win the game again.
If anything, that helps Wendell possibly winning again because he was viewed as basically, a fart in the wind in that season.
Yeah.
Bluntly. And now I think Wendell actually, if he does win again, he should thank the editors for Winners at War because it gave him the opportunity to win. But I don't know if he would ever thank them. Yeah, so
I don't think he would thank them because it was terribly edited. But I do agree with you. Wendell was so terribly edited on that season that I think he could win easily. And I remember when he was on Russell Hance's podcast, I listened to that one, and Russell had said, you would be on the Villains tribe. And it's like, good. Because after what we saw with him in Ghost Island, he's an obvious hero. Yeah. Comes out, they edit him just to be a villain. He would come out on the Villains tribe. He'd be one of the more likable villains out there, and he'd probably end up winning the game.
Yeah. So in fact, what's crazy though is Wendell as the winner doesn't even have the second most confessionals. That goes to Kellen with 41, which I guess makes sense. But at the same time, it's like your winner should. I think the winner, and we've moved away from this for the most part, but here we are, and it's like it's kind of a problem. I feel like the winner should always get like by the time we finish the show, should have the top 2 confessionals. Yeah. I want to be always number 1, but I get sometimes why not.
Well, sometimes you have huge characters. It's just crazy that Wendell has less than Kellen, who's not even. I don't even feel like Kellen's the second biggest character on the season.
No. Laurel has 20. I only bring up Laurel because Laurel has 27. 22 are all in the merge, and I think it's 22 times of her saying, "This time I'm taking the gloves off."
It would not be surprising.
Yeah. Actually, the third I'm sorry. So we have Wendell at third. Tied for fourth is Donathan, which makes sense because I feel like Donathan definitely has a story arc this season.
Absolutely.
And then the other person with the tied with him is Michael Yerger, which they really wanted to play up the fact that he was 18 so much. I didn't really feel like I had much of a story from Michael, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
He was an interesting character. I just don't know if he was like fourth most confessionals interesting.
Yeah, he's not that interesting of a character.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So that's Ghost Island is pretty terribly edited. If you look at the confessional count, you have like averages there. Laurel averages less than 2, which I think makes sense for Laurel. But you have like Angela in the finale averaging with 1.07, Sebastian with 0.86. Like, what?
It's terrible. It's really bad.
As we mentioned, it has only 4. I don't care if she's not as interesting. Why? Like, there's always like garbage confessionals they have to throw out. Like, oh, we made the merge and had a feast and it was so wonderful. Yeah. Like, that's the stuff that like people like Chelsea should get. Just
like she likes coffee.
You put him on the show, you're gonna pay him this money, like get your money's worth. That's my
I agree, man. I totally agree, but hey, that's just the way it is.
If you got like garbage confessionals, give them. Chris Noble gets 25, but like half of them are in that 8th episode.
Yeah, I know. It's the Chris Noble roast. It's such a great episode.
Oh man.
Well, do you have anything else you want to add here about Wendell, or have we pretty much covered it?
No, next week we have, in my opinion, 3 super interesting seasons to talk about, and then Island of the Idols. And I don't mean because of Dan. Tommy isn't as interesting to talk about, though the fact that he is a social player who wins is a very great thing as we continue to talk about how socially that's how you win the game. We'll talk about that next week, but I think we have 3 interesting seasons to talk about in terms of what happens on them. But I think, anyways, it'll be a good week next week. It's our final week, and hopefully
it's our finale.
Yeah. I don't want to downplay it too much. I'm just saying, like, I'm excited to talk about 3 of these.
If Alexa can't make it, we'll get a pop up, and I'll get my girlfriend's laptop, and we'll just set it up where Alexa's got like a pop up her in front of it, and she can just sit there and we'll nod the head every now and then. But Alexa should be here. Anyway, Wes, where can everybody find you?
Yeah. I'm on the. I am the Once Upon an Island YouTube channel. Please subscribe. I just dropped a massive load today. No, I dropped a huge Tony video today. And the next week I have like 4 more story videos over the next like 30 days ish. So if you don't know what a story video is, it's where I take like one major character in Survivor and basically tell you the story of theirs from their perspective for the entire show, and like what the editors are trying to tell you. So if you're like, I don't really understand Vesepia and I don't understand like how she won or like who she is, like basically story video gets rid of all the filler and just focuses on Vesepia and like everything about Vesepia. And you're like, by the end, you're like, oh, like even though I've witnessed all the same content I saw on the show, now I feel like I have a better understanding of this person and their game because I'm not distracted by the 10 other things. I'm only focusing on one person. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes a very interesting case study in a way for these people. So that's where I'm at. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter, but really those places are just places where I just tell you to go to my YouTube channel.
Yeah, I love that. And if you haven't checked those out, make sure that you do check out those videos. They're really great.
Patreon doing something?
Yeah, I might be. Hang on. I got to build up to that. Okay. So if you're not a patron yet, become a patron, patreon.com/Survivor Specialist. If you've been following along with the top 100 Survivor players that Russell Hant's been putting out, Alexa and I were both chosen to do a top 100 list for that. So if you're a patron at anything above our lowest tier, which is just $1, and come on, I can't give you guys great content for $1, not daily content. So I'm doing daily content for our patrons. So anybody who wants to be a patron, now's the time to do it. You'd be getting daily content during this era right now when we know that Survivor is still a long ways away. So I'm trying to make it as worthwhile for you as I possibly can. So make sure you go check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Survivor Specialist. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter @Survivor Specialist. And, our YouTube's our big thing, but go listen on Spotify, iTunes, all that fun stuff. Yeah. And we'll be back next Monday with the final episode of Winning Survivor, where we take a look at the most recent 4 winners in Survivor history. Yeah. See everyone later. Wes, it was great having you.
Somebody's asking what website do I use for confessional counts. It's Survivor Sucks. Just look up whatever season and then look up the words confessional count and you'll find it. So, All right, now we can go.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.